This place that was 100 meters under the ground and about 5 kilometers away from the exit, and had a mysterious energy sealing the exit. It was an extremely secure and sealed region. This seal was so strong that even the spatial orb was useless in front of it. Moon shadow effects were about to end, but Ling Chen did not panic. He acted decisively, and quickly moved behind the evil black dragon. The moment Moon Shadow's effects ended, he instantly activated Vanishing Shadow, and disappeared. When Moon Shadow's light disappeared, the slumbering beast opened its eyes. Its eyes were completely red, as if they had been stained by blood. The instant it opened its eyes, the entire space was filled with red light, and an incredibly overwhelming and terrifying aura swept out from its body that caused the air to stop moving. Ling Chen abruptly stopped moving. Although he was concealed with a concealment technique from the Fengchen technique, faced with an awakened ancient beast, he didn't dare to move at all. He even held his breath. With Vanishing Shadow activated, unless he cancelled its effects, it would be almost impossible for any creature to detect him. However, the evil black dragon was one of the 10 ancient beasts of the East Ocean continent, as well as the Sunrise City's guardian beast, so it was possible that its detection abilities far exceeded those of any other creatures. Ling Chen was worried that even Vanishing Shadow would not be able to keep him safe. The giant beast did not know why it had woken up or if it had been woken up by something. It stretched out its body, and looked around with its terrifying, red eyes, scanning every part of the area. Slowly it began to turn around, looking past where Ling Chen was. Ling Chen held his breath and slowed his heartbeat, maintaining an extremely calm state. He felt the crimson eyes look at him, but they did not stop, and continued scanning. Ling Chen relaxed slightly, but he knew the crisis was not over. Although the awakened beast did not find any abnormalities, it did not immediately go back to sleep. Instead, it rose up, and calmly looked towards the passageway. Evidently, it still had its suspicions. It seemed to be calmly waiting for its target to reveal itself. Time slowly flowed on. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. Vanishing Shadow's effects ended, and Ling Chen's body appeared. This time, Ling Chen didn't dare to even allow a single one of his muscles to twitch. Not only could Vanishing Shadow hide one's body, but could also conceal their aura. Without Vanishing Shadow, he had no way to hide, and he had to control his aura by himself. Luckily, he was near the evil black dragon's tail. Since its back was facing him, when Vanishing Shadow effects ended, it did not react. Evidently, it had not discovered him. Please don't turn around. Ling Chen controlled his breathing and heartbeat while screaming inwardly. Vanishing Shadow had a cooldown time of 100 seconds, which meant that for the next 80 seconds, he had no way to hide himself. If the evil black dragon turned around, it would be able to see him. If Ling Chen slightly moved or made any noise, if he caused even any ripples in the air, it was likely that the evil black dragon would detect it. With regards to his stealth techniques, he believed that if he claimed second place, no one could dare to claim first place. Even Instructor Hell, who had trained him, couldn't compare to him in terms of stealth. Under his careful control, the aura he gave out was less than that of a tiny blade of grass. If he could maintain this state, even if it was an ancient beast, it wouldn't discover him. He continued to scream for the evil black dragon not to turn around, but in the end, his worst fears came true. The evil black dragon began to slowly twist its neck. It turned extremely slowly, examining every square inch of the area. God freaking damn it. Ling Chen's body erupted with cold sweat. If the evil black dragon's neck turned another 30 degrees, it would see him. Ling Chen gritted his teeth. Was his only option to force his way out? He had already used his 3 broken shadows while fighting against the Japanese players, and the evil god's mask and lunar scourge would not be enough to help him survive against an ancient beast's onslaught. This 5-kilometer-long passageway, which he couldn't teleport through, wiped out any hope he had. Ling Chen desperately thought of a way out, then gnashed his teeth. He could only make a gamble. He maintained his stealth state, and an item appeared in his hand. It was something that was shaped like a pineapple, was the same color as a pineapple and had leaves like a pineapple. That's right, it was a pineapple. He then silently chanted, Boroboromi. After he chanted the mystical incantation, Ling Chen's body vanished, and the pineapple he was holding appeared on the ground where he had been standing. Furious pineapple, a demonic and explosive pineapple. Its favorite phrase is, don't think that pineapples are so easy to mess with. Effect 1, Pineapple Grenade. After being thrown, when it hits the ground, it will explode, causing strong vibrations. It has a 100% chance to stun everything within 50 meters for at least 5 seconds. It does not cause any damage. After exploding, the pineapple will disappear. If the furious pineapple is caught before it hits the ground, its explosion can be prevented. Effect 2, Boroboromi. If one holds this pineapple and silently chants Boroboromi, the user can transform into a large pineapple. No creature of any level or grade will be able to determine your true identity and form. The effects last for 10 minutes, after which the pineapple will disappear. By this time, the evil black dragon had already looked over the area. If it saw the pineapple, it would definitely be shocked. After all, how would a pineapple suddenly appear in this area that it had protected for countless years? However, compared to its body, the pineapple was simply too small, and the pineapple that Ling Chen had turned into was right next to its tail, about 30 centimeters away. The evil black dragon's tail was more than 10 meters long, and the thickest part of it was more than 2 meters thick, so it completely covered the pineapple. Unless the evil black dragon moved its tail, it would be impossible for it to see it. The evil black dragon didn't seem to want to make any noise, and it didn't move its tail. After looking around and finding that there were no abnormalities, it once again lay down and closed its red eyes, causing the area to become dim again. Not too long after, its heavy breathing once again sounded out. The evil black dragon seemed to be asleep again. However, the pineapple that Ling Chen turned into still did not move. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes passed, the pineapple soundlessly disappeared, and Ling Chen reappeared where he had originally been. A 7-foot-tall man had actually turned into a pineapple. Although he had no other choice, it wasn't a very pleasant experience. Ling Chen gently breathed in and out, and activated Vanishing Shadow. With his presence perfectly concealed, he silently crept towards the exit. After traveling for 50 meters, Vanishing Shadow's effects ended, and he walked even softer. After walking extremely carefully for 1 kilometer, he deeply breathed in, and started to sprint as he came closer and closer to the exit. The situation just then had been incredibly dangerous. What he didn't expect was that what saved him was the big pineapple he had obtained from the lucky cat. The furious pineapples had 2 effects. The first was an AoE stun, which was incredibly powerful. The first time he had entered the fairy realm, he had relied on this to escape. The second effect was something he had not paid much attention to, but had unexpectedly saved him this time. Of the 5 furious pineapples he had originally obtained from the lucky cat, he now only had 2. Ling Chen did not stop at all. Because he had passed through this place on his way here, he traveled very quickly. A bit less than 45 minutes later, Ling Chen saw some faint, natural light shining on a flight of stone steps. Ling Chen walked up the steps, and soon, he had reached the place from which he had entered from. Just like before, when the lunar scourge came near to the door, the black light disappeared. As soon as Ling Chen walked out, he used a spatial orb to quickly teleport away. None of the guards had any idea what had just happened. Whoosh! At a secluded area, Ling Chen fell to the ground and deeply inhaled and exhaled, then began to cheerfully laugh. Indeed, he was entitled to laugh. Although he had been in many incredibly stressful and dangerous situations, he had reaped great rewards. A god orb. I actually found a god orb in there. What incredible luck. Ling Chen couldn't help but inwardly exclaim. Not only did he obtain a god orb, although the process was quite risky, everything had gone quite smoothly. In fact, it could be described as just him entering, then exiting. He didn't fight or pay any price, he had simply taken the god orb. It was as if fate had determined that he should obtain this orb. And this was only his first day in the East Ocean continent. Chi Yu had said that this god orb was probably the strongest one out of the 12 god orbs. Ling Chen calmed himself down and took out the orb that was as big as a ping-pong ball. It shone with a faint silver light, and had a Omega etched on it. This symbol was Libra orb, type, energy orb, grade, mysterious god, attributes, none. Equipment requirement, can only be socketed in the lunar scourge. Effect, after using any skill, including equipment skills, there is a 50% chance of the cooldown time being immediately reset. Chi Yu, no less than expected from the orb that you called the strongest. Ling Chen excitedly said as he gripped this new mysterious god-grade orb. He was in complete agreement with what Chi Yu had said about this orb. Having a 50% chance for a skill's cooldown to be immediately reset, this was incredible. Skills that had long cooldown times were all extremely powerful. Normally, the more powerful a skill was, the longer the cooldown time would be. Anyone would be extremely excited at the thought of being able to use these powerful skills multiple times in succession. There was a 50% chance to be able to use a skill again immediately, a 25% chance to use it 3 times in a row, a 12.5% chance to use them 4 times in a row, a 6.25% chance to use them 5 times in a row, and this wasn't just for his own skills, but also for his equipment skills as well. Could it be any more overpowered? As expected from the Libra orb. The Libra orb was called a miraculous orb that could change fate. Although its effects are not as stable as those of the other orbs, it can create miracles during key moments. Who would have thought that it was in the East Ocean continent? Having obtained another orb so smoothly, Chi Yu felt even more excited than Ling Chen. Hurry up and put it in the lunar scourge. With 6 god orbs, Moon might be unlocked. Moon? Ling Chen asked in surprise as he hurriedly socketed the Libra orb into the 7th socket of the lunar scourge. Ding, the Libra orb has been successfully socketed into the lunar scourge. When using skills with cooldown times, there is a 50% chance the cooldown will be immediately reset. Ding, with 6 exclusive orbs, the Lunar Scourge's exclusive Lunar Soul skill, New Moon, has been unlocked. The Lunar Scourge's Moon Shadow, Moon Flare and Moon Grief had been unlocked and the 1st, 3rd and 5th exclusive orbs were socketed. It seemed that apart from the first orb, every 2 orbs would unlock a new skill. However, right after the 5th orb had unlocked Moon Grief, the 6th orb had actually unlocked a new lunar skill. No, it wasn't a lunar skill, it was a Lunar Soul skill. New Moon, Lunar Scourge exclusive Lunar Soul skill. When activated, the Lunar Scourge's lunar energy forms a new moon in the sky, letting out weak moonlight. Can be activated at any time and cancelled at any time. Can be cast for a maximum of 10 minutes per day. No MP cost. Ling Chen. Ling Chen looked at the new skill again and again, but felt utterly confused. Looking at its description, it created a new moon in the sky, and that was it. Could it be that it was simply an aesthetic skill? Chi Yu, what is this new moon used for? Is it just for illumination? Ling Chen asked. Well, I guess having a skill for illumination was quite practical. Illumination? Ha ha ha, Chi Yu started to laugh, which caused Ling Chen's body to feel numb, and he shivered. I guess you could use it for illumination, but this moonlight is the Lunar Scourge's core skill. Core skill? What's it used for? From the description of New Moon, apart from illumination, he couldn't see any other use for it. Chi Yu lapsed into silence for a short while before slowly replying, for now, it doesn't have much of a use apart from illumination. Moreover, new moon is only the initial form of the moon, so its power is quite weak. Only when it becomes full moon will it be at the peak of its power. Little Master, do you know why the lunar scourge is called the lunar scourge? Ling Chen, the lunar in its name refers to the moon that it creates. Now that the lunar scourge has 6 god orbs, it can release the new moon. When it reaches the apex of its power, it will be able to release the full moon, which is the source of its enemies' nightmares. Even true gods fear that moon. A moon that even the true gods feared and was viewed as a scourge? What sort of power could it contain? If he had power that caused even true gods to fear, could it be that the moonlight has incredible destructive power? Ling Chen tentatively asked, despite knowing that the new moon didn't have any offensive capabilities. No, Qiyu replied, the moon released by the lunar scourge doesn't have any attack, or any other special attributes. The light that it gives out is similar to the moonlight you see in your world. In other words, the moon released by the lunar scourge is just a smaller version of your own world's moon. This, Ling Chen's mind was full of shock and confusion. If it can only release moonlight, why would it be feared by even true gods? If it's like that, wouldn't they be even more fearful of real moonlight? Indeed, if they could see real moonlight, they would be countless times more fearful. However, Little Master, have you noticed that although this world is called Mystic Moon, night never falls, and the moon never appears? Qiyu's words caused Ling Chen to widen his eyes in shock. Mystic Moon, indeed, he had never seen the moon in this world. There being no night in games was not something unusual. Ling Chen looked up and looked at the ever-bright sky. There would never be night, and thus the moon would never appear. However, because this was so normal, no one had noticed that there was no moon, despite the name of the game. Ling Chen was no exception to this. As such, Qiyu's words caused him to pause in shock for a few moments. Could it be that it has to do with the lunar scourge? Ling Chen asked. Since Mystic Moon was named such, it had to have something to do with the moon or moonlight. However, the moon never appeared. Was it because it was covered by the sun? However, hearing Qiyu's words, it seemed that a moon didn't even exist in Mystic Moon. A long time ago, there was night and a moon, Qiyu said softly. As for why the moon disappeared and there was no longer night, I'm not sure about the details. However, I know the lunar scourge was the root of it. The lunar scourge was born under the moon, and legend says that the complete lunar scourge under pure moonlight can release extremely powerful energy, so powerful that it can swallow stars and destroy the heavens. The lunar scourge was feared by all, and because no one could control it or resist it, they could only get rid of the moon. As such, some powerful demigods worked together, and using some forbidden weapons left behind by the ancient true gods, they created a spatial formation, transporting the moon elsewhere. They didn't know where the moon went, and I only found out from Little Master that it went close to a planet called Earth. Ling Chen. Without the moon, the lunar scourge could only release its basic power. However, the incredibly powerful lunar scourge gained sentience. After discovering that it would never see moonlight again, it developed a skill to create a fake moon. Although the fake moon could not be compared to the real moon, it could still transform the lunar scourge into a forbidden existence. It was a pity that in the Shura's devastation 10,000 years ago, the lunar scourge was destroyed by the moon god clan. If the mystic moon world still had the moon, even 10 moon god clans would not be able to stand up to the lunar scourge. Qiyu's speech sounded like those ancient legends Ling Chen had heard on Earth. Is this true? Ling Chen scratched his head. If Qiyu had said this before Ruo's incident, he would have thought about it as a background story of the game. However, with Qiyu appearing in the real world and Ruo's body appearing in the virtual world, he simply couldn't tell anymore. Even so, some of the things Qiyu said were a bit inconceivable. The mystic moon world had a moon before. And this moon had been transported far away, to where the Earth was, which was to say, the moon that could be seen from Earth used to be from here. In other words, a long time ago, the Earth didn't have a moon. Who would believe such a thing? At the very least, humans had never heard of such a thing before. Chi Yu knew how Ling Chen would react after hearing such a thing. She softly said, "Perhaps it was a bit early to tell Little Master these things, and it's probably quite difficult for Little Master to believe and accept these things. When Little Master completes the lunar scourge, without me saying anything, Little Master will naturally understand everything about the lunar scourge. However, I never thought that things would go so well. We've only been in the East Ocean continent a day, but we already found an orb. Looks like Little Master really is blessed by the god of luck. Well, since we found the orb, does Little Master want to stay and play for a bit or immediately return to the Forgotten Continent?" Hearing Chi Yu's words, Ling Chen frowned. Within the narrow and long country to the east, the snowy valley under the cherry blossoms. This was the information that Su'er had given to him. Based on the precedent she set with the Virgo orb, her information should be correct. Indeed, the East Ocean continent was long and narrow. However, Ling Chen had found the Libra orb under the Sunrise City. There were no cherry blossoms there, much less any snowy valleys. This was evidently a pitch-black underground space. It definitely wasn't the place Su'er's information referred to. Ling Chen tapped his chin. "Chi Yu, could it be that the Libra orb wasn't the orb that Su'er was referring to? Could it be that we had obtained the Libra orb as a pure coincidence? I think it's possible that there's another god orb here." Ling Chen made his decision and put on a set of ordinary equipment. He took out the simple map of the East Ocean continent and headed north. 5 days later, ever since Ling Chen had faced off against countless Japanese players by himself in the Sunrise City, his fame skyrocketed in the virtual world. The waves that he created had a long-lasting effect, reaching to the ends of the earth, and most players elevated him to the same level as Eve. To be able to toy with thousands of players and even kill so many of them, he was worthy of such glory. As for the Japanese players, they had lost the respect of the whole world. The Chinese players relentlessly mocked them on the international forums, but they could say nothing in response. Their pride and joy, the Blade Emperor, had become a derogatory term. Although Cruelty Ichinowa's sudden loss of reason and Yamazaki Jinichi's sheep act were quite suspicious, there was no denying that they had happened. Almost every player in the world saw what happened, and there was nothing they could say to preserve their dignity. A hat of shame was secured to every Japanese player's head. These days, the Japanese players had lived their days in utter fear, terrified that Ling Tian might appear out of nowhere to kill them again. Ling Chen had left too great of a shadow in their hearts. But quite a few days had passed, and there was no sign of Ling Tian, so they could slightly relax. Northernmost East Ocean continent, mountain region. After passing through this mountain, he would arrive at the celestial Cherry Valley. Ling Chen closed the map and hurried onwards. Compared to the map he had bought from Qian Gun Gun, the map he had bought from the item shop was much too simple and crude. There were many names on the map, but there were no descriptions. This entire trip, Ling Chen had run into more than 10 dead ends, and had to turn back. He also walked into many areas that were filled with high-level monsters that were impossible for him to defeat. All in all, he had faced many perils in order to arrive here. The northernmost region of the East Ocean continent was bone-piercingly cold. Ling Chen simply couldn't stand it, and eventually bought a fur coat at a town called Snowridge Town. Ling Chen was now wearing the fur coat as he walked through the snow. The layer of snow on the ground was too thick, and was impossible for a Vina horse to walk through. I hope this is the place Su'er referred to, otherwise this would have been a great waste of time. This was a mountainous region, and there were countless mountains in sight, both large and small. All of them were covered with snow, and under the sunlight, Ling Chen's vision was filled with white. The celestial Cherry Valley was supposedly in the middle of this mountainous region. Ling Chen started to quickly walk towards his final obstacle. More than 1 hour later, he had reached the summit. From there, he could see the entire view of the celestial Cherry Valley, which left him completely dumbfounded. In front of him was a completely white world without blemish. At the bottom of the mountain, countless cherry blossoms added to the beauty of the place. The snow lightly fell from the clouds, and countless cherry blossom trees proudly stood in the snow. The flowers were also pure white, making it difficult to distinguish whether they were snowflakes or flowers. Although Ling Chen was standing on top of a mountain, this scene extended as far as he could see, and looking down from such a high vantage point, the scene below was also covered with mist, which added a dreamy element to the enchanting scene. This place was incredibly beautiful, impossibly beautiful, even Ling Chen spaced out for a few moments while staring at this spectacle. Cherry blossoms in the snow, he had reached the celestial Cherry Valley. "Xiao Hui, let's go!" Ling Chen yelled out as he started to run down the mountain. Of course, running down a mountain was much faster than climbing up a mountain. With Xiao Hui in front and Ling Chen following after him, they quickly reached the foot of the mountain. Upon reaching the bottom, they stood before the cherry blossom forest. The snowy gully under the cherry blossoms, there were cherry blossoms and snow. All that was missing was the gully. Was it a gully in between the mountains? Now that he had confirmed his destination, Ling Chen started to look for small mountains in this cherry blossom forest. "Ding, you have entered Celestial Cherry Valley, Fallen Cherry Forest." Upon entering the cherry blossom forest, a system announcement sounded out. Ling Chen continued to walk forwards while marveling at the cherry blossoms around him. It wasn't that he had never seen cherry blossoms before, but that the scene of white cherry blossoms dancing in the snow was normally impossible to see. How could one simply go past with just one glance? However, it seemed that this sort of perfectly beautiful place could only exist in this sort of world. After walking for about 2 minutes, Xiao Hui suddenly stopped walking, and called out with "woo" sounds. Ling Chen also stopped walking, took off the heavy and cumbersome fur coat and equipped weapons into his hands. When leaving the city, the old shopkeeper had told him that the cherry blossom forest had a type of spirit, a very dangerous type of spirit. Multiple dangerous auras started to close on him. However, no matter if it was in front or behind him, or to the sides, there were nothing but cherry blossoms and snowflakes. Just as Ling Chen was about to walk forwards, information from Xiao Hui was sent into his mind. Cherry Spirit Girl, Type, Spirit, Level, LV 40, HP, 3500. Cherry blossom trees that were turned into demonic spirits by the cherry blossom god representative's power. They have the ability to conceal themselves. They look gentle and weak, but are extremely dangerous. Every cherry blossom petal is a deadly weapon in their hands. Any being other than the cherry blossom god representative entering here will be chased out by them. Passive abilities: immune to physical attacks, damage taken from water element attacks -30%, can only exist in the cherry blossom forest. Upon leaving, they will immediately die. Attack skills: Cherry Illusion, uses the cherry blossoms on the ground to perfectly conceal themselves. They will only be revealed when attacking or being attacked. Cherry Petal, shoots out a cherry blossom petal, dealing a great amount of damage to a single target. The petals start slow but increase in speed, and carry a tracking effect. After being hit, there is a 3% chance of one's magic and skills being sealed. Weaknesses: Fire, Wind, Lightning, Earth, Light Resistance -20%, Darkness Resistance -200%. These were the spirits that the old shop owner had referred to. No wonder why he could sense danger, but couldn't see anything. They could actually conceal themselves. And perfectly, at that. It was a pity that they had run into Xiao Hui. With Xiao Hui's Eye of the Holy Spirit, all concealment techniques were useless. At the same time as the information about the Cherry Spirit Girls were transmitted to him, their positions were also revealed. Currently, Xiao Hui's eyes were like his eyes, and his body blurred as he used Moment of Elegance to flash forwards. Ding! Libra Orb's effects have been activated. Moment of Elegance's cooldown time has been reset. That's right, over the past few days, Ling Chen had confirmed that the Libra Orb's effects activated as soon as he used the skill. Swish! Minus 8,186, minus 8,175. Amid the flash of bright light, two soft cries sounded out. Behind Ling Chen, two snow-white figures appeared. They had hair that was white as snow, and the pale faces of young girls. Their bodies were slim and willowy, which were covered by thick white clothing. They looked like two delicate and fragile young girls. They pitifully cried out, then fell down, then dissipated into two cherry blossom petals. Immune to physical attacks? In front of the Cancer Orb, that was simply a joke. As the two cherry spirit girls were killed by Ling Chen, more than 10 cherry blossom petals suddenly appeared in the air. They gently floated over towards Ling Chen, and soon, more than 10 cherry spirit girls simultaneously appeared. They again looked like completely innocent and harmless beauties with white hair. The cherry blossom petals initially moved quite slowly, as though they were being blown by a soft breeze, and looked completely harmless. They suddenly accelerated when they reached 4 or 5 meters away from Ling Chen, and whistled through the air like sharp knives. However, Ling Chen did not panic. He turned, and used another moment of elegance, instantly traveling 15 meters and leaving the cherry blossom petals far behind him. He had reached the cherry spirit girls, and sent out 2 Ling Tian bursts. In a wave of soft and lovely cries, 5 cherry spirit girls were altogether insta-killed, transforming into cherry blossom petals. It was a pity that Ling Chen did not hold back at all against these beauties, and showed no mercy. He locked onto each of the cherry spirit girls, and killed them in turn. In just a moment, he had finished all of them off. However, this was the cherry spirit girls' territory. Just as Ling Chen finished off a wave, before he could even take a breath, another 10 or so cherry spirit girls around him, and started to attack. The cherry spirit girls' main skill wasn't in using cherry blossoms to attack, but in concealing themselves. Anyone would panic upon suddenly being attacked by an unseen enemy. However, this ability was useless in front of Ling Chen, and so was their immunity to physical attacks. As such, Ling Chen did not feel any pressure at all in dealing with the cherry spirit girls. Ling Chen casually destroyed wave after wave, but their numbers not only did not decrease, but started to increase. What was even worse was that even though he had killed so many LV-40 monsters, they had not dropped a single copper coin. They were even stingier than the buck-toothed rabbits in the novice village. Ling Chen stopped meaninglessly fighting, and after wiping out the new wave, he dashed into the depths of the forest. The ground was covered with snow, and the sky was blank and white. There were only cherry blossom trees in sight, and it was quite easy to lose one's way in this sort of place. However, with Xiao Hui in the lead, Ling Chen didn't need to worry about directions at all. They continued towards, and walked even deeper into the forest. Along the way, countless cherry spirit girls attacked him, but they could only harass them. With his ability to destroy them in one hit, the cherry spirit girls were unable to stop him in the slightest. 45 minutes later, they were still in the forest, and there seemed to be no change in their surroundings. However, at this moment, Xiao Hui stopped walking, and some information from Xiao Hui appeared in Ling Chen's mind. Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation, a chaotic formation created by the cherry blossom god representative with cherry blossom trees as the foundation and her own power as the source of its energy. It stops all outside creatures without permission from entering the cherry blossom god palace. The Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation is incredibly mysterious and ever-changing, as well as contains numerous mysteries. If one retreats from the formation, they will quickly be able to reach safety. However, if they forcefully advance, they will be destroyed by cherry blossom petals. Ever since the Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation was constructed, no being has ever forced their way through. The Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation was created from the Cherry Blossom God Representative's strongest formation abilities. From its description, its effect was similar to that of the Fairy Realm's Bewildering Formation, and its purpose was also to keep outsiders out. However, it seemed to have attack properties that the Bewildering Formation didn't, and apparently the attacks became stronger the deeper one went. Moreover, no one had ever forced their way through before. If he had to rely on his own power, Ling Chen would have no confidence in getting past this formation. After all, this was a formation created by the Cherry Blossom God Representative. However, with Xiao Hui, everything was different. The Bewildering Formation contained the power of the entire fairy clan from back then, but this Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation only contained the power of the Cherry Blossom God Representative. Although it had attack properties, it was bound to be weaker than the Bewildering Formation. Since Xiao Hui could easily pass through the Bewildering Formation, it shouldn't be too difficult for him to also pass through this formation. Xiao Hui, it's up to you. Xiao Hui stood unmoving, and his horn lit up with a faint gray light. After a while, the light disappeared, and a complicated diagram appeared in Ling Chen's mind. Ling Chen looked at Xiao Hui in shock. After Xiao Hui's Eye of the Holy Spirit had been leveled up to LV3, it had become even more powerful than it already was. Now, he could stand there without moving and analyze a formation created by a moon god representative and transmit it to him. This was simply unbelievable. With this information, Ling Chen was able to fully comprehend the Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation. He was confident that even without Xiao Hui guiding him, he could easily pass through it. Moreover, he could do so without triggering any of the attack mechanisms, and would not even be detected by the formation. Xiao Hui, let's go. As usual, it was Xiao Hui walking in front and Ling Chen following behind him as they walked into the Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation. Ding, you have entered the dangerous region Celestial Cherry Valley, Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation. Indeed, the Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation was an extremely dangerous region. One misstep, or even the slightest incorrect positioning of one's body, could result in them being sent to the beginning. If it was serious, they could even die. The surroundings were strangely quiet, and there were surprisingly no cherry spirit girls around. Ling Chen did not walk too fast or too slow, and confidently walked forwards as he calculated the best route to take. After walking for 100 meters, a fairly thick cherry blossom tree appeared in front of him. Ling Chen walked over and paused 2 meters in front of the tree, then walked 8 times around it. Suddenly, the thick cherry blossom tree disappeared, and if one looked closely, they would be able to see that the arrangement of the cherry blossom trees around them had changed as well. Just then, Ling Chen had been walking around the cherry blossom tree. However, from a third party's perspective, without the cherry blossom trees, they would have seen him walking in a straight line. Within the Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation, Ling Chen was moving, but so were the cherry blossom trees, and even the ground. As such, if people simply walked according to their instincts, their path would be completely controlled by the formation. If they simply walked forwards, even if they weren't attacked by the attack mechanisms, they would be forever trapped within the formation. After a few minutes, the way Ling Chen walked greatly changed. He walked towards the right and walked in the arc, then walked towards the left and walked in an arc, then turned to his right at a 90-degree angle, and would sometimes spin in a circle. After proceeding like this for about half an hour, yet another thick cherry blossom tree appeared. This time, Ling Chen walked around it 32 times, then headed forwards without looking if his surroundings changed. After walking 10 or so steps, the cherry blossom trees on both his sides suddenly fell down, accurately smashing towards him. Normally, a person would instinctively try to dodge these falling trees. However, Ling Chen didn't even bother to look at them and continued forwards, allowing them to fall towards him. Boom! The cherry blossom trees fell to the ground. Although it seemed that they would fall onto Ling Chen, one of them fell in front of him and the other fell behind him. In the next second, they both disappeared, leaving only tens of petals floating down. Ling Chen shrugged and continued to walk forwards. Within the Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation, the space was warped, so one's vision was essentially useless. For example, a cherry blossom tree that looked 3 meters away could be as far as 100 meters away, while a tree that looked tens of meters away could be right next to a player, so close that they could touch it. The 2 cherry blossom trees that had fallen down, hadn't fallen at all. Instead, it was simply because the space had been twisted, and really, the real threats weren't the trees, but the petals that were floating downwards. If he had moved forwards or backwards at that moment, they would have stabbed through his body like sharp blades. Although Ling Chen had fully comprehended the Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation, he was still incredibly wary and careful. This was especially after he reached the deeper regions of the formation, where the attacks became even more ferocious. If he made even one misstep, he could be killed, as well as alert the creator of the formation, the Cherry Blossom God representative. 3 hours later, Ling Chen's forehead was covered with sweat. Having to be extremely careful about every single step was extremely mentally taxing. Finally, he reached the tallest and largest cherry blossom tree. This cherry blossom tree was 1 meter thick, and stood out clearly from the other trees. Standing under this tree, Ling Chen looked up, and saw the sky almost completely covered with petals. "It's here." Ling Chen gently clenched his hands into fists and breathed in. He closed his eyes and reconfirmed the final route that he had to take, then started to walk anti-clockwise around the tree and silently counted in his mind. After walking around it 52 times, Ling Chen paused for a moment, then walked for another 1/3 of a circle, then turned around and leapt towards the tree. The feeling of hitting the tree never came. Just as he was about to hit it, the gigantic cherry blossom tree disappeared, and a warm wind passed by him, dispelling the coldness within his body. Ling Chen felt as if he had been immersed in a hot spring, and couldn't help but indulge in the feeling, closing his eyes. Immediately, he opened his eyes again, and stared at his surroundings in shock. He was now in a completely different world. The unending scene of the cherry blossom trees had disappeared, and so did the snow on the ground. Even the coldness, that he had gradually grown accustomed to, was gone. Instead, the air in this place was soothingly warm. The sound of flowing water could be heard in the air, and there was a wooden bridge about 10 steps away from him, with water flowing under it. There was not a single trace of snow on the mountains. Instead, Ling Chen could see that the mountains close to him and far away were all covered with trees, creating a scene of green. The ground was covered with fallen leaves, creating a natural carpet of green. The leaves were all incredibly green, and not a hint of yellow could be seen. There must also have been some waterfalls here and there on the mountains. This was Ding, you have entered Celestial Cherry Valley Central District. Continuing ahead, you will reach the Cherry Blossom God Palace in which the Cherry Blossom God representative resides. Going near to the Cherry Blossom God Palace will likely enrage the Cherry Blossom God representative, so please be wary. The system announcement gave Ling Chen an answer. He thought for a moment before suddenly looking backwards. 30 meters behind him was that sea of cherry blossom trees. Over there, it looked like it had been snowing for more than 10,000 years, whereas on this side, it was warm as spring. Although they were so close together, they seemed like 2 different worlds. Evidently, this was the work of the Cherry Blossom God representative. This showed just how unbelievably powerful she was. However, according to Suer's information, the orb should be found in the snowy valley under the cherry blossoms. The most fitting place seemed to be that cherry blossom forest. The place in front of him had no cherry blossoms, nor was there any snow. Moreover, continuing forwards, he might even face a lot of trouble if he ran into the Cherry Blossom God representative. That was a moon god representative who was worshipped by the countless residents of the East Ocean continent and controlled the rules and order of the entire East Ocean continent. However, Xiao Hui's horn had never lit up while they were passing through the cherry blossom forest. If there really was a god orb in there, Xiao Hui would have detected it from afar. Could it be that it wasn't in the cherry blossom forest? Or was it that the forest was too big, and they hadn't walked past the right place? This place contains the aura of the moon gods, so it should be where the East Ocean continent's moon god representative resides. This place is so elegant, these moon god representatives really know how to indulge themselves. Qi Yu's voice sounded quite sarcastic. Evidently, she did not have a favorable attitude towards them. Little master, did you come here to have a look at that moon god representative? It'll be quite dangerous, hee. Ling Chen tapped his chin as he narrowed his eyes, saying, since we came all the way here, we can't just turn back and leave, right? The moon god representative, who cares if we anger her? After all, she's just the East Ocean continent's moon god representative. What can she do to me when I return to the Forgotten Continent? After saying so, Ling Chen strode forwards. Ling Chen couldn't help but inwardly sigh. This moon god representative really knew how to enjoy herself. The central district was surprisingly big. After walking for 15 minutes and going around a small mountain, a breathtakingly beautiful world appeared in front of his eyes. This place was filled with flowers of different colors, shapes and sizes. Within this sea of flowers, there was a large, two-story house. It was 30 meters wide, and seemed to be constructed out of wood. The house was quite grand, and although it didn't look extremely elegant, it had an air of luxury simply from existing in this dreamlike world. Information from Xiao Hui appeared in Ling Chen's mind. Cherry Blossom God Palace. That was where the Cherry Blossom God representative resided. A half-meter-wide path started at where Ling Chen was standing and passed through the sea of flowers, extending to the house's front door. If Ling Chen walked on this path, he would reach the most powerful existence in the East Ocean continent, the Cherry Blossom God representative. Qi Yu, would these moon god representative recognize the lunar scourge's power? Ling Chen asked as he walked. No, Qi Yu replied, the moon god representative's power was given to them by the moon gods. Unless they had extremely high talent, their lifespans would be far shorter than that of the moon gods. The moon god representatives from back then who saw the lunar scourge have probably all passed away. More than 10,000 years have passed, and the lunar scourge has long since been forgotten, and neither has the moon god clan brought it up. As such, I wouldn't even be surprised if the moon god representatives didn't even know the name lunar scourge, much less recognize its power. Alright, then I can be at ease. Ling Chen let out a breath in relief. If he really ran into the Cherry Blossom God representative, he would definitely be chased out, or even killed. He wasn't so naive as to think that he could defeat a moon god representative. However, with the Feng Chen Sect's escape skills and the lunar scourge's abilities, as well as the Libra orb, he would have no problem in keeping himself alive. What he was worried about was that using the lunar scourge's power could expose it, and bring him great trouble. However, it turned out that this would not be an issue. Xiao Hui, let me know in advance if you detect anything. It was still Xiao Hui walking in front and Ling Chen walking behind him, and he started to walk slower. Ling Chen trusted Xiao Hui's insane detection abilities. If they were discovered by the Cherry Blossom God representative, Xiao Hui would immediately let him know. Xiao Hui also walked slower, and soon, they had reached the Cherry Blossom God Palace's front door. The door was wide open, and inside was a large hall, without a soul inside. Ling Chen silently tiptoed in, feeling suspicious. This was where the Cherry Blossom God representative resided, the holiest place in East Ocean continent, and yet he was able to enter so casually. Of course, perhaps the Cherry Blossom God representative was extremely confident in her great sun celestial cherry formation, and believed that no one could pass through, and even if they did, she would detect them. Or could it be that she was not here today? Suddenly Ling Chen faintly heard something. It was the sound of water flowing. This wasn't the sound of water naturally flowing through a stream, but rather, water being scooped up and falling back down. This sound came from the back of the Cherry Blossom God Palace. Ling Chen raised his eyebrows and slowed his breathing, making his body enter its calmest state as he motioned for Xiao Hui to keep quiet. At this moment, Xiao Hui's horn suddenly started to glow. Xiao Hui's eyes lit up and waved his paw towards Ling Chen as he ran towards a room towards the right. Because his body was so small and light, he didn't make any noise at all when running. Ling Chen immediately followed him. He could almost certainly confirm that the Cherry Blossom God representative was at the back. However, she had completely let her guard down, and did not detect his presence. Another reason was that his control over his body was simply monstrous. When he was fully controlling his aura, he wouldn't disturb even a speck of dust, nor would he make even a bit of noise. Ling Chen soundlessly entered the room to his right. The entire time, still hearing the sound of water flowing and splashing. This room was quite small, and seemed like it wasn't entered into very often. There was nothing inside except 3 items on the windowsill, which looked like they had been there for a long time. They were a scroll, a white belt and a normal-looking fist-sized rock that was covered with a white light. Xiao Hui stopped under the windowsill. Evidently, these 3 things were the treasures that Xiao Hui had detected. Every treasure that was detected by Xiao Hui was not ordinary. Ling Chen immediately went over and looked at their stats. Flying scroll, usage requirements, none. After usage, any skill that has not reached max level will permanently gain 1 level. Belt of Blessing, type, belt, grade, celestial, equipment requirements, luck greater than 5. A belt that has been blessed by the Goddess of Order. After wrapping it around one's waist, a player can receive the blessing from the Goddess of Order. Stats, luck plus 5, immune to critical hits and pierce hits. Spatial stone, a stone that contains mysterious spatial energy. It is usually naturally created in regions in which the 7 elements are perfectly balanced, making it very rare. It tends to irregularly move around after being formed, and can move anywhere. Using special methods, one can extract the spatial energy from within the spatial stone and create special items. However, the forging requirements are extremely high, requiring the forging technique to be at least that of the Heaven's End grade. People who can use the spatial stone to forge items are incredibly rare. Coincidentally obtained by the Cherry Blossom God representative and sealed with the Moon God's power to prevent it from escaping. A scroll that could increase the level of a skill by 1, the Flying Scroll. And this rock was a spatial stone. And that belt was actually a celestial grade belt. A belt. Belts were so rare that even though Ling Chen had Heaven's End grade and celestial grade equipment, this was the first time he had seen a belt. They were just as rare and valuable as masks. Moreover, this belt's stats were amazing. Not only did it give an astounding plus 5 to luck, but he would never have to worry about being hit by critical hits or pierce hits. Every single one of these 3 things were absolute treasures, and they were right in front of Ling Chen, without any protection. If Ling Chen didn't take them, there would be something wrong with his brain. He walked forwards and unhesitatingly put all 3 items into his bag. No matter what else happened today, just obtaining those 3 items made everything worth it. After putting away the 3 treasures, Xiao Hui's horn continued to glow. Evidently, there was other treasure around him. Was there anything more wonderful than obtaining priceless treasures without having to pay any price at all? Seeing Xiao Hui run off again, Ling Chen didn't even think as he joyfully followed behind him. Of course, he didn't forget to completely hide his presence. Ling Chen followed Xiao Hui through a fairly short corridor, and stood in front of an open door. This seemed to be a bedroom, with curtains made of hanging crystals and a luxurious-looking bed. After exiting the bedroom from its back door, Ling Chen entered yet another corridor, which extended to the back of the house, following behind Xiao Hui, Ling Chen could hear the sound of water becoming louder and louder, clearer and clearer. This sound, it couldn't be. Very soon, they reached the end of the corridor. Xiao Hui stopped walking and stood as he stared forwards. Ling Chen walked over incredibly carefully, and stood behind Xiao Hui. This was the very back of the house. On the other side of the wall should be the backyard. Ling Chen held his breath and stretched his head forwards until it reached the screen window, and he peered outside. He immediately saw a small, rippling, lake surrounded by thousands of flowers. At the side of the lake was a slender and beautiful figure. Ling Chen's pupils constricted. That was the cherry blossom god representative. No. That wasn't the important point. What was even more important was that this goddess-like woman was taking off her clothes. Her small and delicate feet skipped into the water, looking like a pure girl playing in the water. Her jade-like hands undid the belt around her waist, then took off her cherry-colored long skirt, revealing her long and slender legs. She now only had one piece of clothing covering her. Her cherry-colored undergarment simply couldn't hide her curvaceous body. Ling Chen's eyes widened as his body heated up. This situation, could it be? The woman didn't notice that she was being peeped on, and she lightly walked deeper into the water. She then turned around, facing in Ling Chen's direction. Ling Chen was in a daze, and didn't hide himself, and instead just stared, white as snow. That was a term commonly used to describe women who were beautifully white. However, this phrase was true for this woman's skill. Her skin was so white that it had a sense of purity. Her slender and long legs, as well as that narrow and supple waist, was enough to make anyone's blood boil over. Every inch of her skin could make a person burn with passion, especially her beautiful breasts. They were incredibly full, yet perky and firm, and were almost bursting out of her undergarments. She did not notice Ling Chen, and with her eyes slightly closed, she began to undo the strings tying together the undergarment. A flash of white shone at Ling Chen, then bounced as the two pink gems on them also trembled, causing Ling Chen's eyes to widen even further. The undergarment slowly slid off as the woman slowly submerged into the water. There were many flower petals in the water, giving off a sweet fragrance, and the pleasant warmth of the water caused her to give a faint moan of pleasure. Ling Chen had actually never peeped on a woman before today, of course. It wouldn't really matter if she was just a random stranger. However, she was the East Ocean continent's moon god representative, the renowned cherry blossom god representative. No matter who she was, the gentlemanly Ling Chen wouldn't continue to peep like this. No, instead, he activated his camera function. Ling Chen silently aimed the camera towards the woman without any shaking or wobbling. With his hands as steady as rocks, the photos taken were crystal clear. He also changed the settings here and there in between taking photos. 2 words, marvelously professional. God damn. Ling Chen couldn't believe he was actually secretly taking photos of the East Ocean continent's moon god representative. Not only that, but she was wet and completely naked, and the photos were high definition and uncensored. If this was spread, Ling Chen would be hunted down by the cherry blossom god representative to the ends of the earth, as well as become Japan's public enemy. Of course, he would be secretly admired and envied by them as well. After all, this guy had peeped on the cherry blossom god representative's celestial body with his own eyes. Taking a bath was one of the situations in which women were the most relaxed. Adding on the protection from the great sun celestial cherry formation, which people normally couldn't pass through undetected, the cherry blossom god representative had completely let down her guard as she relaxed in the water. He bent down as she washed her legs, and water dripped down from her bountiful peaks. Ling Chen felt great changes occurring in the lower half of his body as his heart began to pump faster. Every girl in Heart's dream was an incredible beauty, and he also had the seductress Chi Yu by his side. As such, he had a lot more control over himself than most people had. Normally, he would be stunned, but wouldn't have had such a heated reaction. However, this person he was peeping on was the noblest and most powerful person in the East Ocean continent. This was much too stimulating and exciting. Even if he was made of stone, he would have quite an excited reaction. Ling Chen's heart beat faster and faster, and his face even began to turn red as his stare was filled with passion and greed. Her incredibly supple and round breasts almost made him want to go over and rub them. The woman rose up, and slightly turned, once again directly facing Ling Chen, allowing him to see her beautiful face. Her enormous breasts were at least a 36F, and proudly hung on her chest. Around her neck hung a piece of string, and there was something attached to the string that was securely hidden by her breasts. Such a beautiful figure and such a beautiful face. Everything that a woman desired was gathered on her body. Her body was simply heavenly, and could make any man go crazy. Ling Chen remembered Qiyu saying that all of the moon god representatives were women, and all of them were extremely beautiful. This one was hundreds, if not thousands of times more beautiful than he had expected. Ling Chen suddenly thought of something. If even a moon god representative was so beautiful, just how stunning would the three moon goddesses, Order, Freedom and Fate be? It was simply inconceivable. Ling Chen continued to stare, and his hands started to tremble. He couldn't help but gulp. In that moment, he inwardly yelled, "Crap!" Vanishing Shadow. Ding! Libra Orb's effects have been activated. Vanishing Shadow's cooldown time has been reset. Who's there? The sound of Ling Chen gulping was almost imperceptible, and unnoticeable by normal humans. However, the woman was, after all, the cherry blossom god representative. She stood straight as the clothes she had taken off rose up and covered her body, and her body flashed as it appeared in the place she had heard the sound. Holy crap, she can teleport? Ling Chen stuck to the corner of the room, standing completely still and suppressing his breathing as he inwardly thought, that was way too close. Almost 0.1 seconds after he made the sound, he had activated Vanishing Shadow, completely hiding himself and Xiao Hui. The cherry blossom god representative also instantaneously reacted, teleporting extremely quickly. However, it was a pity that she was a woman, and had to wait for her clothes to cover her up before she made her move. Otherwise, Ling Chen might not have been able to activate Vanishing Shadow before she arrived. There was no shock or fear on the woman's face, there was only fury. She frowned in confusion. She was sure that she had heard some strange sounds from this place, and had instantly teleported over, but she couldn't detect anyone or anything. Compared to this beauty, Ling Chen was feeling much worse. The cherry blossom god representative was currently standing just half a step away from him. If he moved even slightly, he would be able to touch her body. An enchanting fragrance came from her body, but what was even worse was that, she had just come out of the water, and her clothes were quite wet, and stuck onto her body. There were two clear dots poking out of her clothing, as if she wasn't wearing anything at all. Drops of water slid down from her face, falling into the chasm between her breasts. Ling Chen's heart beat faster and faster. This wasn't because he was worried about being found, but because of his male instincts. To most men, a wet beauty was even more seductive than a naked beauty, and could cause their passion to flare. Moreover, this was a moon god representative, and she was incredibly close. If he moved his head, he would almost be able to stick it into her breasts. This caused Ling Chen's concealment to fall apart. His heart beat uncontrollably, and he simply couldn't suppress his aura anymore. Even Ling Chen knew that it would be impossible to continue to hide in such a situation. "Get out here!" The woman furiously yelled, and she turned, stretching out her right arm towards where Ling Chen was. A multitude of cherry blossom petals appeared in the air, shooting towards Ling Chen. Although these were just beautiful cherry blossom petals, Ling Chen felt as if there were hundreds of deadly knives piercing towards him. Without hesitating, he used Moment of Elegance to shoot forwards. As soon as he activated the skill, he and Xiao Hui were revealed, appearing in the woman's vision. After using Moment of Elegance to move 10 meters away, before the woman could attack again, Ling Chen hurriedly waved his hands, wait, 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 wait. Don't attack, I'm not a bad person. Maybe it was because of his acting, or because the woman didn't plan to continue attacking, but she lowered her arm and coldly stared at him. Evidently, she knew that he had seen her entire body. However, what she was even more shocked about, was how he had arrived here. This place was blocked off by her great sun celestial cherry formation, and no one had ever passed through, let alone exited without her detecting them. After Ling Chen spoke, he also stared in shock towards her chest. As she moved her arm, her massive breasts also swayed, revealing the thing that hung in between her breasts and swinging it in front of her breasts. It was an orb that emitted a faint silver light, about as big as a ping-pong ball, with a symbol etched onto it. This orb's shape, size and light were all too familiar. It looked exactly like the other god orbs he had found. Could it be? Little Master, the orb hanging around her neck is one of the lunar scourge's orbs. When Little Master was peeping, I already sensed it. Ling Chen, Xiao Hui's horn was glowing, and it was pointing right at the woman's chest. Who would have thought that he would find an orb under such circumstances? The orb was actually on the cherry blossom god representative. Wait a second, wouldn't that mean there were 3 god orbs in the East Ocean continent? Wait. Suer's information. The snowy gully under the cherry blossoms. Cherry blossoms. Cherry blossom god representative. Snowy, gully. Cherry blossom, snowy, gully. Could it be that this sentence was referring to the cherry blossom god representative's cleavage? What the email protected, $%. Ling Chen's body swayed, and swallowed a mouthful of blood. Cherry blossom, snowy, gully, it completely matched the description. However, that description simply had no tact at all. This was the legendary Heaven's Secret sect's power. This sort of description, if it wasn't for some unexpected circumstances, how would he have found the orb? No normal person would think to look in a woman's breasts. Ling Chen wondered how Suer would react if he told her about this. Right now, what Ling Chen was thinking about wasn't why this orb was hanging in the cherry blossom god representative's cleavage, but how to get it out. However, if she knew that not only did Ling Chen peek on her, but also took photos, she would probably hunt him down to kill him again and again. Just as she spoke, she could feel the man staring intently at her chest. She coldly harumphed, and a white light covered her body as a snow-white dress appeared on her body, covering almost every inch of her skin. Ling Chen shook himself out of his daze and hurriedly thought, this woman didn't continue to attack, evidently because she wanted to know how he came in. He had to take advantage of this opportunity. Facing a moon god representative, an existence even more powerful than the war demon beast and shadow demon beast, gave him great pressure. Ling Chen looked up and met her eyes with his. A strange light flashed in his eyes as he cast a complete and utter belief curse on her. Ding! Libra orb's effects have been activated, complete and utter belief curse's cooldown time has been reset. At the same time, information from Xiao Hui appeared in his mind. Snow Cherry, type, Moon God representative, grade, level. One of the Moon God clan's representatives of order. Because she protects the East Ocean continent, she is often called the Cherry Blossom God representative or Cherry Blossom Goddess. She was the last nine-tailed snow fox in Mystic Moon, and has the royal bloodline of the nine-tailed snow fox clan. After growing to maturity, she would lead mortals astray, so the goddess order took her in and cleansed her of her demonic nature and purified her soul. She also gave her the moon god's power, as well as gave her a human form, allowing her to become one of the representatives of order. She came to the East Ocean continent 300 years ago, and became the moon god representative controlling the order of the East Ocean continent. Passive abilities? Attack skills? Weaknesses? Snow Cherry? Her name sounded quite similar to that of the princess of the fairy clan. TLN, when pronounced in Chinese, Snow Cherry is also Ying Shui, but the Ying is a different word and has a different meaning. No matter if it was level or grade, there was too big of a gap between Xiao Hui and the cherry blossom god representative. As such, he could only provide a tiny bit of information. Ling Chen quickly adjusted his emotions and warmly smiled as he looked into her eyes and said, "O great cherry blossom god representative, it is my honor to meet you. I was sent by the goddess order to find you, as well as bring something back to her." Ling Chen's words were utter rubbish, and even idiots wouldn't believe them. As he spoke, Ling Chen inwardly screamed, "Complete and utter belief curse, please work." Before today, his Fengchen curses had never failed before. He always expected his curses to work, due to his monstrous mental energy. However, this situation was different. He was facing a real moon god representative. For his mental energy to surpass even Xiao Fengchen's, it would definitely also be superior to the cherry blossom god representatives. However, Xiao Fengchen told him that the Fengchen curse's success rate not only depended on one's mental energy, but also their overall power. If there was too much of a gap in their power, it was possible that the Fengchen curse could fail. The difference in power between cherry blossom god representative and Ling Chen wasn't just by a bit. This incredibly beautiful and sensual-looking woman was something that exceeded the mysterious god grade, and was probably close to the Saint Destroyer grade. An existence even more powerful than the War Demon Beast, Shadow Demon Beast and the Evil Black Dragon. Back then, Xiao Fengchen had affected all three moon goddesses with his Fengchen curse. Evidently, it was possible to curse even moon goddesses. However, Ling Chen only knew some basic Fengchen curses. Could they really affect a moon god representative? "Her ladyship sent you?" Hearing Goddess Order's name, the cherry blossom god representative's eyes slightly widened. The fury in her eyes was replaced with warmth, and her frowning eyebrows also returned to their normal state. Her reaction caused Ling Chen to feel delighted, and he almost jumped in glee. It worked. The Fengchen curse had actually worked on the cherry blossom god representative. Ling Chen decided that he would fight to the bitter end with anyone who denied the power of the Fengchen curses. It even worked on a moon god representative. That meant the rest of what he wanted to do was going to be easy. The cherry blossom god representative would definitely readily hand over the orb to him, after which he could simply leave. That's right, it was that simple. However, the cherry blossom god representative's next sentence made him feel like he had been smashed in the head by a stick. "But, the moon god clan doesn't accept any males. Did her ladyship really send you?" Ling Chen's excitement was instantly extinguished. When speaking, the cherry blossom god representative's eyes slightly trembled, and she had a complicated look in her eyes. She looked half alert and hesitant. Evidently, she had not completely believed what Ling Chen said. That's right, she only partially believed his words. If the complete and utter belief curse had failed, the cherry blossom god representative would not have believed Ling Chen's words at all. The moon god clan had a male? What a joke. The goddess order would send a human to retrieve something for her? Ridiculous. With the goddess order's abilities, she could appear in any place in the mystic moon world, so why would she send such an incomparably weak human? The moon god clan casually sweeping the floor would be enough to destroy hundreds of human streets. However, this look of hesitation signified that she at least somewhat believed him. Alright, at least it was better than her not believing him at all. Ling Chen immediately realized this and stepped forwards as he sincerely said, "That's right. Her ladyship, goddess order, sent me here. I only recently entered the moon god clan, which is why you've never seen before. Goddess order commanded me to come here and retrieve something that is very important to her. She said that you need to give it to me immediately so that I can take it to her." The cherry blossom god representative's expression changed and the struggle in her eyes grew even more. Evidently, she started to suspect that something was off. She asked, "What does her ladyship want?" Ling Chen immediately pointed out towards her chest. "Her ladyship, the goddess order, commanded me to bring back the orb hanging in front of your chest." Please take it off and hand it to me, so I can quickly take it back to her ladyship. Ling Chen's comprehension was 17, which meant that the complete and utter belief curse would only last for 17 seconds. After just a few exchanges, more than half of the time had expired. Ling Chen's finger trembled. Hurry up and give it to me. Hurry up. This orb? The cherry blossom god representative looked down and held the orb in her right hand. She looked as if she was going to take it off, when the look in her eyes suddenly changed. She suspiciously asked, but her ladyship said that this orb is something that represents utmost evil, and that I have to keep it on my body to guard it. Unless she allows it, I can never take it off. In the end, she didn't hand over the orb. As the cherry blossom god representative spoke, the effects of the complete and utter belief curse ended. In that moment, the look in her eyes became icy cold. Just as Ling Chen was about to release the second complete and utter belief curse, a cold and furious voice sounded out, "Fengchen murdering heart curse. You're from the Fengchen sect. Ling Chen." Ling Chen was greatly shocked from hearing the cherry blossom god representative yell out, "Fengchen murdering heart curse." Who would have thought that the Fengchen curses were so famous that even the East Ocean continent's moon god representative knew about them? He didn't have time to think as he quickly activated the second complete and utter belief curse. However, this time, the cherry blossom god representative's gaze remained cold and she continued to glare at him icily. The pressure and killing intent she emanated continued to bear down on him. This time, the complete and utter belief curse had no effect at all. The reason was quite simple. After knowing that what Ling Chen had used was a Fengchen curse, she had put up some mental defenses. Back then, when Xiao Fengchen had used the Fengchen curses on the moon goddesses, they had also been unprepared. Afterwards, none of them worked on them either once they became aware. Otherwise, with his escaping abilities, he definitely wouldn't have been locked up in the lunar sky hell. The Fengchen sect's last sect master, Xiao Fengchen, has already been locked into the lunar sky hell, and he will never escape from there. Who would have thought that the Fengchen sect would have other successors? It's a pity that you're too weak. Although I don't know how you passed through the Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation, it was you who offended me first, and even used a Fengchen curse on me to try to obtain this evil orb. I can't find any reason to pardon you, so, you can be on your way. The beautiful face was filled with a sense of nobility and dignity. The cherry blossom god representative slowly lifted her right hand with her palm facing Ling Chen. With just a thought from her, she would be able to completely destroy Ling Chen. Ling Chen felt quite depressed. With her mental defenses, the Fengchen curses would have no effect on her. In that case, using such gentle tactics wouldn't work anymore. However, if he used force, and completely offended this moon god representative, he would face unimaginable consequences. Despite that, the cherry blossom goddess was filled with killing intent towards him, and definitely would not spare him. Since it was like this, the consequences wouldn't be much different even if he went further. Looks like he had to obtain the orb by force. Thinking to there, Ling Chen suddenly raised his right hand. Silver light erupted from the lunar scourge, fixing the cherry blossom god representative in place. Ding! Libra orb's effects have been activated. Moon Shadow's cooldown time has been reset. The Libra orb's effects were simply amazing. Moon Shadow could freeze targets in place for an insane 5 seconds. With the Libra orb's effects being activated, it could last for 10 seconds. The cherry blossom god representative stood there, unmoving. Her beautiful eyes were filled with shock and dismay. Ling Chen did not waste any of this precious time, and quickly rushed over to the cherry blossom god representative. He stared at her chest as he grinned, saying, "Since it's like this, I'll have to use force. I must have this orb." When she had put on her clothes, the orb had disappeared, into her deep cleavage. Ling Chen stretched out his hand and suddenly pulled her clothes to the sides as she stared in bewilderment. A pair of full and white breasts bounced out, shaking in front of Ling Chen and almost making him spit out blood. blood. But truth be told, they didn't even need those protections. With a moon god representative's status and power, would they need the protection of the system? No player in their right mind would offend them. Moreover, even if a player could violate a moon god representative, they would be repeatedly hunted down and punished. In other words, they simply would not be able to exist within the game anymore. Of course, although it was possible to violate them, it was highly unlikely that any more would dare to do so. However, a little LV-30 player had actually done so, and succeeded. He even completely ripped her clothes open. What was even worse was that the Cherry Blossom God representative could not do anything against this weak little LV-30 player. In fact, she could not even move. Ling Chen didn't have time to worry about the consequences of his actions. The orb on her chest contained hope for reviving Ruo, so he had to obtain it no matter what. Let alone offending a moon god representative, even if he had to offend the Emperor of the Heavens, he would not hesitate at all. With her outer clothes pulled open, the Cherry Blossom God representative's undergarments still damply clung to her skin, barely covering her bountiful breasts. Ling Chen stared, with his eyes fixed on those mesmerizing breasts. Not only were they huge, but they were wonderfully shaped, and had an enticing cleavage. Ling Chen's continued to stare, with his face only a hand's distance away from them. God damn, this task was way too stimulating. Ling Chen's body began to uncontrollably heat up, and his head began to buzz. Moon Shadow's effects only lasted for a very short period of time, so he did his best to control himself. He stretched out his hand and reached into her cleavage. The moment his hands came into contact with her smooth skin, Ling Chen's brain seemed to freeze, and almost forgot everything. An intense desire welled up within him to lower his head and kiss her breasts. The Cherry Blossom God representative's chest was not only large, but also soft. The softness and suppleness of her breasts almost caused Ling Chen's mind to break down, and he couldn't bear to withdraw his right hand. Luckily, he had a fairly strong mind, and instantly remembered what he should be doing. He reached further in and grasped the orb, and reluctantly pulled his hand out. As he did so, her breasts swayed considerably. The orb felt just like the other 6 orbs, and it was inscribed with an M with a long tail. Ling Chen gripped the orb in his right hand, and used his left hand to squeeze the Cherry Blossom God representative's breasts. With this woman's status, charms and beauty, any normal man would do this sort of thing. This pair of breasts are simply exquisite, no less than expected from a moon god representative's breasts. Ling Chen couldn't help but inwardly mutter. However, his right hand didn't forget its job. As soon as Moon Shadow's effects ended, before the Cherry Blossom God representative could react, he released a second Moon Shadow. Ding! Libra Orb's effects have been activated. Moon Shadow's cooldown time has been reset. The probability of the Libra Orb's effects being activated twice in a row was a 25% chance. Although this probability wasn't too low, it was surprising for it to happen in such an opportune moment. This meant that the Cherry Blossom God representative would not be able to move for the next 10 seconds. Ling Chen grasped the orb and tried to pull it out. However, no matter how hard he tried, he simply couldn't dislodge it from around her neck. Looking at the Cherry Blossom God representative, although she was a moon god representative, she was still a woman. Not only that, she was untainted by the world and had barely any interaction with males before. Her mind went completely blank, and her body seemed to be bound by some sort of magic so that she could not move at all. When Ling Chen's hands shamelessly fell on her breasts, her whole body stiffened as a strange and humiliated feeling spread across her body. Despite her discomfort, she couldn't make a sound, and couldn't resist him at all. Moon Shadow's time limit decreased second by second, but Ling Chen simply couldn't retrieve the orb. As he became more and more worried, he unconsciously started to grope with more and more strength. It felt as if he was kneading tofu with his hands, and even gently squeezing them would cause them to adhere to the shape of his hands. The softness of her breasts could awaken the bestial nature of any man, making them want to ravage her. Because of one hand, he was filled with anxiety due to not being able to pull out the orb. Because of the other hand, he was filled with ecstasy. Currently, Ling Chen was feeling extremely worried, yet blissful. "Little master, this isn't going to work," Chi Yu's voice softly sounded out as she watched Ling Chen, let alone the cherry blossom god representative. Even for corpses, without the owner's permission, it is impossible to forcefully take something from someone. Even if you try for 1,000 years, you won't succeed. Ling Chen, that's right, unless the owner gave permission, it was impossible to forcefully take something that a person was wearing or currently using. The only way one could take something by force was to force the owner to give it up, or to kill them and hope that it dropped. If it was possible to steal something by simply grabbing and pulling, the gaming world would be filled with theft. This meant that if Ling Chen wanted to obtain this orb, he had two choices. The first was to kill the cherry blossom god representative and hope that she would drop the orb. However, Ling Chen couldn't even consider this as a possibility. Killing a moon god representative that was even more powerful than Tao Tai. What a massive joke. Even if all of the players in the East Ocean continent banded together, they wouldn't have been able to take her down. Then the remaining option was for her to give it to him. Looking at his left hand that was still squeezing her breasts, it seemed that this option wasn't quite likely either. "What should I do then?" Ling Chen asked Chi Yu. "What should you do?" Chi Yu giggled, and slowly replied, "Right now, what little master needs to do is enjoy this beauty in front of him. How could you let this opportunity to take advantage of her go? Although her breasts aren't as big as mine, and she's not as beautiful as me, but she's still quite decent." Ling Chen, perhaps it was because this cherry blossom god representative was simply too alluring. Ling Chen felt convinced by Chi Yu's words and squeezed each of her breasts in each hand. They were soft and supple, yet firm and perky. They were simply exquisite. It was no wonder that a gentleman like Ling Chen became like a wild beast. He closed his eyes in intoxication, and felt them as much as he could. In the end, he was using all of his full strength, distorting their shape. Afterwards, Ling Chen suddenly let go, and turned and sprinted away. After being freed from Ling Chen's demonic hands, the cherry blossom god representative's breasts sprang back to their original shape, albeit with some red marks on them. After Moon Shadow's effects ended, the cherry blossom god representative regained control over her body. She was like a frightened baby deer, and hurriedly pulled her clothes together, covering her breasts. She flusteredly held her arms in front of her breasts as her cheeks became red with panic, fury, humiliation and indignance, as well as self-pity. The current her had none of the dignity a moon god representative should have. Instead, she looked like a young girl who had just been violated. The only difference was that as a powerful and noble moon god representative, she wasn't weak and didn't shed any tears. "I won't forgive you." The numbness and pain in her breast still had not completely disappeared, and the feeling of humiliation remained in her mind. The cherry blossom god representative was utterly furious. She was accustomed to peace and tranquility, and very much enjoyed it. Moreover, with her status, she never would have thought that a man could violate her like this. She was filled with boundless hatred and killing intent towards him. Looking at Ling Chen, who was rapidly escaping, she stretched out her hands and as her chest bounced up and down. Heavenly cherry brilliance formation. KRSSSSH. The air was torn as the sky of cherry blossom petals descended, shooting towards Ling Chen's body. It was as if a vast sea of cherry blossoms was falling on him. Facing this sort of attack with a massive range, even if he had 8 legs, and could move 100 times faster, it would be almost impossible for him not to be hit. He made a decision in a second, and equipped the Great Ravager and Twilight Spear. He cast a moment of elegance as he charged upwards towards the cherry blossoms. Swish! Ling Chen's body and the deadly cherry blossom petals collided. In that moment, the evil god's mask flashed, and all of the cherry blossom petals that hit his body were sent flying back towards the cherry blossom god representative. At the same time, Ling Chen's body broke through the layer of cherry blossom petals. He had only been in contact with the cherry blossoms for an instant, making it impossible for the cherry blossoms to attack him after the evil god's mask's effects were activated. Chi 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 chi. The cherry blossom petals reflected by the evil god's mask hit the cherry blossom god representative. The sheer amount of force contained in them caused her to stagger back for 4 or 5 steps, and she almost lost her balance and fell on the ground. The cherry blossom petals remaining in the air seemed to lose their power, and drifted down then disappeared like snow. Ling Chen, who had narrowly survived this crisis, yelled inwardly, "This woman's way too vicious. To use such a terrifying and powerful move against a measly player like me, it seems that she's determined to kill me. If it wasn't for the evil god's mask, I definitely wouldn't have survived that." Having taken into account the things he had done to the cherry blossom god representative, killing him 100 times using the cruelest methods wouldn't be excessive. Evil god's mask. I can't believe you also have the Fengchen Sect's evil god's mask. The cherry blossom god representative's death skill, unleashed in her fury, was released in order to seal all possible escapes for Ling Chen and kill him. She never expected that not only would he be unharmed, but the attack would also be reflected back to her. She vengefully stared at him, and her cold and beautiful eyes fell on his mask, and gnashing her teeth, she called out the name of the mask. After all, the cherry blossom god representative was a moon god representative with much knowledge. If she had known the Fengchen sect, it was impossible for her not to know of their treasure, the evil god's mask. The Fengchen sect barely had any attack power. All of their strengths were in preserving their lives and plotting against others. Their supreme treasure was also useful in saving their lives. In fact, it was called the most powerful life-saving treasure. Against this evil god's mask that was filled with the power of a true god, forget moon god representatives, even the 3 moon goddesses' attacks would be reflected. Oh, so you actually know about this mask. In that case, you should know that as long as I wear this mask, all of your attacks will be reflected back to you. This was the first time someone had recognized the evil god's mask. He was secretly shocked, but he acted extremely nonchalantly, putting on an air of, "If I have this mask, even the Lord of the Heavens wouldn't be able to do anything to me." Humph, the cherry blossom god representative angrily frowned and her eyes turned icy. In order to become a moon god representative, one not only needed sufficient power, but also needed to train their hearts. After all, moon god representatives controlled the rule and order of a continent, so they had to always maintain a calm heart. Her current expression was furious to the extreme. The evil god's mask's effects can only be triggered once every 10 seconds. Do you really think it can protect you from me? After speaking, she placed her arms horizontally in front of her chest. A warm breeze blew, and the image of a gigantic cherry blossom appeared behind her and proudly bloomed. In that instant, the bright sky dimmed, and countless streams of air flew from different directions towards the giant cherry blossom. God damn, another big move? Seeing this, Ling Chen felt quite dismayed and shocked. He hurriedly waved his hands as he yelled, "Wait, wait, wait, wait. Wait a minute. There's something I need to tell you. Look, I'm a player, so even if you kill me, I'll still come back to life. I'll just lose some EXP, and won't even suffer any pain. However, if you kill me, the consequences will be dire for you. You don't believe me? Hee, let me show you something." As he talked, Ling Chen couldn't help but chuckle sinisterly. He quickly lifted up his communication device and opened up a screen. What was depicted was a celestial beauty in a lake. Every part of her body was clearly visible: her neck, her shoulders, her extremely bountiful breasts, her slim waist. Her body was curvy where it should be curvy, and slim where it should be slim. No one could pick out any flaws on her body. Her belly was soft and flat, and her long legs were incredibly beautiful. Between them, even the pink cherry blossom could be seen clearly. You. The cherry blossom god representative stared in shock for a few minutes. She immediately recognized herself in the photos, and she felt as if she had been struck by countless bolts of lightning. Her entire body trembled, and just as she yelled out, her vision darkened. This humiliation and enormous blow to her dignity almost caused her to faint. As for Ling Chen, who had shamelessly peeked on her and recorded the whole thing, he stood proudly as he continued to show the photos. He even began to professionally commentate, "Phew, look at that skin. Even milk isn't so white. And those breasts, so large and white, as well as so perky." The feeling of groping them, Ling Chen stretched out his hand and sniffed it, was even more wonderful and indescribable. I can bet that even if one had to sacrifice the rest of their lifespan to touch them, there would still be thousands, if not tens of thousands of men who would be willing. And that waist, those legs and that ass, oh, and this place. Wow, its pinkness is something only young girls should have. No less than expected from a goddess body, even an experienced guy like me couldn't help but grope. If I released these photos publicly so that the whole world could see it, how many men would be unable to sleep at night and drool over it? You. Enough. The cherry blossom goddess body shook as she bit down hard on her lips. Her face had become deathly pale, and the gigantic cherry blossom behind her, as well as the chaotic air streams, all disappeared. Even if it didn't disappear, she still wouldn't have been able to attack. Ling Chen's intention was very clear: if she killed him, he would definitely spread these photos. If anyone said that a LV-30 player could blackmail a moon god representative, it would be taken as a massive joke. However, Ling Chen had accomplished this. What's more, the thing that he was threatening the cherry blossom god representative with was far more dire than even her own life. Unless it was part of their profession, no woman would be willing to display their naked body to the masses. Moreover, the cherry blossom god representative was the moon god representative of the East Ocean continent. If this was spread, even if she immediately died, she would not be able to regain her honor. Ling Chen knew that using this tactic was incredibly cruel and shameless. However, this was the only leverage he had over her. He grinned as he said, "My dear cherry blossom goddess, please don't work yourself up. Apart from you and me, no one has seen these photos. In truth, I didn't take those photos for fun. Instead, I just want to use them to make a simple deal with you." The cherry blossom god representative's chest heaved as she stayed silent, still biting her lips. Ling Chen ignored her reaction. He was confident that she could not maintain her strong front in light of those photos. He slowly spelt out the terms of his deal: "If you give me that orb around your neck, I'll immediately delete those photos. Oh, and if you don't trust me, I'll just give this communication device to you. I can also give a little apology for accidentally peeking on you taking a bath. The orb that you called an evil item is useless to you, and might even bring catastrophe to you. You have nothing to lose from this deal. What do you want this evil orb for?" The enraged cherry blossom god representative was finally able to say a complete sentence. Everything that Ling Chen had done was for this orb that the goddess order had given her, so she couldn't help but feel suspicious. "That's a secret." "At least, I won't use it to do evil," Ling Chen replied. The cherry blossom god representative's gaze was like an icy sword. Despite looking so angry, this beauty still looked quite stunning. Ling Chen's eyes couldn't help but be drawn to her heaving chest as she spoke. "When her ladyship gave me this orb, she specifically told me to never take it off or give it to anyone. I won't give it to you." Ling Chen was shocked that she could remain so resolute despite his threats. He tapped his nose as he shook his head in disappointment. "Since it's like that, then I'll allow all the men in the world to appreciate your body." What a pity. I was hoping to keep this as a private collection, but now it has to be shared with the world. In response, the cherry blossom god representative coldly laughed. Within her expression was a sense of heart-wrenching grief. I see that the Fengchen sect's deeds are just as shameless as her ladyship had said. Even if you humiliate and cause my reputation to be destroyed, I still won't give it to you. Her cold voice sounded just as beautiful, but every word was cold and firm as ice. As she spoke, the gigantic cherry blossom behind her once again bloomed as the overwhelming killing intent once again covered Ling Chen's body. Ling Chen's eyes flickered. This woman's personality was much too strong, even such a savage tactic didn't work. Goddamit. Looks like I chose the wrong timing, Ling Chen silently muttered to himself. Indeed, the timing wasn't right. She had been peeked on by him and had her photos taken, then was frozen and groped. Finally, she had been shamelessly blackmailed. All of her anger had been forced out at once. In her fury, the cherry blossom god representative had lost all of her rationality, and wanted to kill him no matter what. There was no way she would accept any deal from him. I should probably wait for her to calm down. Thinking that, Ling Chen suddenly raised his right hand and released Moon Grief. A dark light instantly covered the cherry blossom god representative's body, and a confused expression appeared on her face as the giant cherry blossom behind her stopped blooming. It then started to wither, then disappeared. To forget how to cast a skill halfway through casting it was a terrible feeling. Ling Chen activated Broken Shadow and rushed off. His speed left the cherry blossom god representative bewildered. She utterly hated Ling Chen to the extreme, so how could she just allow him to leave? Just as she was going to tear space to go after him, her hand froze in midair, and a shocked expression appeared on her face, because she had suddenly forgotten how to distort space. She could only watch as Ling Chen charged further and further away, and his voice came from afar. My dear cherry blossom goddess, it's a pity that we didn't reach an agreement today, but that's all right. We have many opportunities in future. I'll come visit you soon, so please take some time to think about my offer. Oh, and don't worry, I won't show anyone else your photos for now, because I want to keep them for myself. It wasn't easy to get those beautiful pictures, so how can I just show them to others? I'll look at the cherry blossom goddess' beautiful body every day. What a wonderful life, ha ha ha. The final laugh sounded incredibly frivolous and obscene, causing the cherry blossom god representative to gnash her teeth in fury. However, she simply couldn't remember how to use her skills to give chase, and she couldn't even use her long-ranged attacks. Moreover, Ling Chen was simply too fast, and had quickly exited her range. She had heard that the Fengchen sect's skills in running away were unparalleled, but only now did she truly believe those rumors. Indeed, he was the Fengchen sect's successor, but he was a player, and was only LV 30. However, the cherry blossom god representative knew that she, a moon god representative who controlled the entire East Ocean continent, had been toyed around by him. He had stealthily passed through the Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation, entered into her residence, peeped on her taking a bath, took photos and violated her body, and she could only watch as he escaped. She had never felt so depressed, so furious and so helpless before. Of course, she was also deeply shocked. Even the strongest human in the East Ocean continent was unable to do this, and yet a mere player had done so. She was sure that the reason she had suddenly forgotten how to use her skills was also related to him. He was only a LV 30 player, and yet had such terrifying abilities. He had toyed around with her, a moon god representative, and had taken advantage of her. He had seen every part of her body, and her breasts still had marks from being groped by him. This was how terrifying the Fengchen sect of the Night Demon clan's three sage sects was. No wonder why the Night Demon clan could oppose the Moon God clan back then. However, the Cherry Blossom God representative wasn't quite correct. Indeed, the Fengchen sect's power was terrifying, but Ling Chen had only received some basic powers. The most powerful item on Ling Chen was definitely the Lunar Scourge with 6 God Orbs. With the Lunar Scourge's power, the Cherry Blossom God representative was simply helpless in front of him. After recovering, the Cherry Blossom God representative did not chase after Ling Chen. Truthfully, after what had just happened, she felt some fear towards this little player. She gritted her teeth and did not move for a long time. After calming down, she stretched out her hands and released her moon god power. Instantly, countless complex changes happened within the Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation. She definitely wouldn't allow Ling Chen to enter again. Currently, Ling Chen was already far, far away. 10 kilometers to the west of the Sunrise City, at a secluded location, Ling Chen was sitting against a tree. He sighed, and tiredly asked, "Chiyu, do you have any ideas?" "Ideas? Little master should consider this. If someone much weaker than you wanted to take your twilight spear, what would they have to do to take it from you?" Chiyu asked. Ling Chen silently thought for a while. The twilight spear was his most powerful weapon, and was coveted by countless people. If someone wanted to take the twilight spear from him, there would only be two methods: killing him and hoping that he would drop it, or forcing him to give it to them. Taking by force was impossible in virtual games, and this was the same situation with the Cherry Blossom God representative. Even the most effective threat against women was ineffective against the Cherry Blossom God representative. If he wanted to force her to give the orb to him, Ling Chen could feel a headache coming. He simply couldn't think of anything more compelling than the photos he had. As for killing the Cherry Blossom God representative, not only were the consequences extremely dire, but it was completely impossible with his strength. If he truly wanted to kill her, he could summon the Shura, but it would be too much of a waste. Moreover, it would be too much of a pity to kill such a perfect little goddess. Is it really impossible? Ling Chen asked in frustration. Well, there is a way. Little master can go and harass that little goddess every day. No woman likes being harassed, regardless if they're a little girl or a goddess. If you harass her enough, maybe she'll give little master the orb. Ling Chen, what sort of idea was this? Chiyu's words were evidently a joke. However, Ling Chen thought for a moment before hesitantly replying, "All right, I guess there's no harm in trying. After all, I don't have any better ideas." Chiyu was slightly shocked, then started to laugh with her beautiful voice. "Little master, could it be that you haven't had enough of her body, and you want to take even more advantage of her?" Ling Chen didn't know what to say. Chiyu once again laughed, and she materialized in front of Ling Chen amidst a black light. She smiled as she looked at him, and an intoxicating fragrance swept into Ling Chen's nose. Chiyu was standing incredibly close to him, only 2 steps away, and Ling Chen could see every feature of her beautiful face. Any man or woman who had eyes that could see would feel their spirit tremble upon looking at her. Why did you come out?" Ling Chen took half a step back. Even when facing the Cherry Blossom God representative, Ling Chen had not appeared so flustered. He even turned his face away, not daring to look at her. Ling Chen's actions clearly amused Chiyu. She giggled as she stepped forwards, her red lips parting as she seductively spoke, "Little master, could it be that I'm so ugly that you don't even want to look at me?" The fragrance coming from her was simply mesmerizing. Truthfully speaking, Ling Chen was quite afraid of Chiyu, and tried to avoid looking at her for a simple reason: she was a demoness who no man could resist. She had an enchanting voice, and a ravishing body. Not a single woman Ling Chen had met before could compare to Chiyu's looks and figure. She had a pair of shockingly large breasts, and her black-colored clothing looked as if they would burst open at any moment. Ling Chen had touched them the first time he had met Chiyu. They were definitely larger and firmer than the Cherry Blossom God representatives, and her ass was also bubbly and round. Anyone who saw them would be able to imagine how bouncy and soft they were. And yet, her waist was so slim, and though it did not look unnatural, it added to her seductiveness. This unrealistically enticing and cunning woman was someone who Ling Chen didn't dare to get near to. After such a long time, Chiyu knew almost everything about him, whereas he knew pitifully little about her. In fact, he didn't even know if what he knew about her was true. Although Chiyu seems to help him, he had a feeling that this woman was incredibly dangerous. One day, if he really fell for her charms, the consequences would be terrifying. Ling Chen never doubted his instincts. "I'm just your little servant, but little master has never tried to get closer to me. I originally thought that there was something wrong with little master, but only today did I find out that little master is a normal man. Why is it that you don't want to touch me then? Could it be that I'm not as good as that little goddess?" Chi Yu slowly walked closer, and although she only took a single step forwards, she seemed so much more alluring. She leaned in close to Ling Chen, so close that her gigantic breasts were almost sticking against his chest, causing Ling Chen to hold his breath. Chi Yu smiled, and her eyes turned misty as she coyly looked at him. "Little master, look, my chest is even bigger than that little goddess, and I'm sure they feel even better." As she spoke, her hands grabbed onto one of Ling Chen's hands, pulling it towards her breasts. This witch knew just how sexy she was, and knew that Ling Chen didn't dare to touch her. As such, she liked to tease him now and then, causing much mental anguish to Ling Chen. If Ling Chen really couldn't control himself and leapt on her, she would definitely disappear, and Ling Chen would have to suffer the torture like a crazy beast. The Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation in the Celestial Cherry Valley had been greatly changed by the Cherry Blossom God representative's moon god power. Of course, it would be impossible for Ling Chen to follow the same route. However, with Xiao Hui, even if it was twice as complicated, Ling Chen could still pass through it easily. The first thing Ling Chen had done after logging on was heading towards the Celestial Cherry Valley and directly appeared in the Central District. With the spatial orb, the Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation was completely useless. After appearing next to the Cherry Blossom God Palace, Ling Chen immediately activated Vanishing Shadow. After entering undetected the previous day, Ling Chen was confident that he could do the same today. Ling Chen silently crept around in the Cherry Blossom God Palace, but didn't find the Cherry Blossom God representative. He was dumbfounded. Could it be that she had been scared off? However, it simply didn't seem possible that a moon god representative would be scared off by a player. Finally, Xiao Hui nudged him, and led him deeper inside. Ling Chen saw the Cherry Blossom God representative next to a small waterfall. However, she was no longer calm and relaxed like she was before. Instead, she was frowning, evidently in a bad mood. What happened the previous day would cause her to be unable to smile for a long time, and could even leave a permanent shadow in her heart. The water fell from the mountain cliff, creating a mist. The Cherry Blossom God representative stood in the midst of the mist, as if she wanted to use the coldness of the mist to wash away her frustrations and to calm herself down. Standing in the mist, the Cherry Blossom God representative looked every bit like a goddess who was untainted by the world. After all, the Cherry Blossom God representative was a moon god representative, and had an aura which could not be compared to by ordinary women. Ling Chen couldn't help but stare for a while, unwilling to destroy this beautiful scene. However, in the end, he wasn't here to admire the scenery. "Hello. Beautiful Cherry Blossom Goddess, good to see you again." Ling Chen walked out, loudly greeting the Cherry Blossom God representative. The Cherry Blossom God representative looked up, and slowly turned around. The instant she saw Ling Chen, her beautiful eyes turned icy cold. Her expression displaying deep shock. She had completely changed the Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation, and it had become incredibly complex. And yet, this person had appeared here without her detecting him at all. The Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation that no one had been able to pass through in hundreds of years was like nothing to him. How could she accept this? At the same time, the fury that she had gradually suppressed erupted. This was the first time she had ever wanted to kill a person so much. Even she was shocked at how much killing intent she was releasing. However, when she thought of how he violated her, the killing intent that she should have been suppressing became even stronger. "I'm sure that the intelligent Cherry Blossom Goddess knows why I'm here again. In that case, will the merciful cherry blossom goddess agree to my request? After all, that orb is useless to you, but it can help me fulfill my dream. At the same time, you'll be able to get rid of trouble for yourself. Isn't this perfect? Ling Chen said while grinning. However, this time, he did not take out the photos, and didn't even directly mention them. He realized that showing them would probably have the opposite effect that he wanted. The temperature of the air rapidly fell. The cherry blossom god representative's killing intent was already bone-piercingly cold, causing Ling Chen to shiver. At least on the surface, the cherry blossom god representative looked quite calm. She looked at Ling Chen as she calmly said, "Tell me why you're so desperate to obtain this evil orb." Back when the goddess order had given this evil orb to her, she hadn't told her what it could be used for, or why it was called an evil orb. It seemed that she didn't want to mention it, but only told her that she couldn't let it fall into anyone else's hands. Women were naturally curious, and evidently, Ling Chen wanted to obtain this orb at all costs. Adding on his despicable actions, she could tell that this orb contained some sort of evil power. If this despicable person obtained it, he definitely wouldn't use it for good. It was possible that he would use it to create some sort of catastrophe. Well, Ling Chen thought for a moment before replying, "It's to save someone." What he said was the truth. He wanted to obtain this orb no matter what it took in order to save Shura, even if there was only a tiny bit of hope. The cherry blossom god representative coldly laughed. If the things from the previous day had not happened, and Ling Chen directly said these things, she might have believed him. However, after being violated by him, she wouldn't believe anything he said. To save someone? Her ladyship said that this orb represents utmost evil, and that I can't allow it to fall into anyone else's hands, especially not into the hands of a scoundrel like you. Even if I die, I won't give it to you, so give up. Moreover, even if you don't come to find me, I'll come to find you. Your blasphemy cannot be forgiven. Not only will I kill you, but I will also gather all the lords and mayors so that it will be impossible for you to remain in the East Ocean continent. Ling Chen acted as if he was greatly frightened. No way. Didn't I just touch your breasts? Do you really have to be so extreme? The cherry blossom god representative's body shook, and in her fury, she sent 3 cherry blossom petals shooting towards Ling Chen. Ling Chen dodged them with a moment of elegance as he arrogantly yelled, "You think I'm afraid of you because you're a so-called goddess? You want to kill me? If you're able to kill me, why am I still standing here? Go and gather the lords and mayors if you want, it doesn't matter. After all, I'm not from the East Ocean continent, and if I don't like it here, I'll just leave. What are you going to do about it?" If it wasn't the cherry blossom god representative, but the moon god representative of the forgotten continent, he wouldn't have dared to act like this. After all, not only would he be hunted down, but he would also be unable to enter any towns or cities in the forgotten continent. As soon as he went in, he would be attacked by the villagers and residents. Moreover, he would never be able to upgrade his profession, do any quests, join any guilds, visit any shops, do any forging, enjoy any of the recreational facilities, participate in any of the competitions, use teleport scrolls or revival points. He would not be able to touch anything even slightly related to towns or cities. However, this was the East Ocean continent, so he simply didn't care. In fact, he didn't even bother to go into any of the towns or cities. Doubtlessly, Ling Chen's words only served to fan the flames. Every word undermined the cherry blossom god representative's dignity as a moon god representative. She finally lost control, and attacked in fury, causing a wild wind to blow. However, just as the wind rose, it suddenly died down, because Ling Chen used moon shadow at that moment. With a whoosh, he rushed to the frozen cherry blossom god representative, whose face fell, with his nose just millimeters away from her face. He stretched out his hand, and like a hooligan harassing a woman, he lifted up her chin and slowly said, "Are you going to give me that orb or not? Think carefully, disobedient girls will be spanked." After saying this, Ling Chen ran off with a gust of wind. Moon Shadow's effects ended, and the cherry blossom god representative who regained her freedom almost went crazy as she released all of the murderous intent within her. The air became incredibly chaotic as she coldly stared at Ling Chen, her snow-white hands shining with a white glow. Cherry Heart Fury. Cherry Heart Fury combines the fury in one's heart with moon god power, filling the sky with cherry blossom petals saturated with killing intent. Savagely attacks and shreds all targets within 3,000 meters, causing 90,000 base damage per second. Severely limits target's vision and movement, lasts for 30 seconds. Can only be activated when furious and cannot be ended early. Ling Chen, who had been preparing to reflect this attack, was given a big fright when he received this information from Xiao Hui. Ling Chen loved powerful single-hit attacks, as the result of attacking him with those would be the attack being reflected. However, this Cherry Heart Fury dealt damage for 30 seconds. The evil god's mask could only prevent him from taking damage once. Ling Chen didn't even think as he quickly raised his right hand and activated Moon Grief. Ding! The Libra orb's effects have been activated, Moon Grief's cooldown time has been reset. Currently, Moon Grief had a range of 60 meters around Ling Chen, and easily reached the Cherry Blossom God representative. She suddenly forgot how to cast her skills again, and the attack quickly dissipated. Ling Chen started to swagger towards her, looking at her like a wolf looking at a little lamb. I'll say it again, give me the orb. Otherwise, disobedient girls really will be spanked. You're looking to die. Let alone the Cherry Blossom God representative, even a Buddha would be infuriated to the point of exploding. The Cherry Blossom God representative stretched out her hands, and found that while her power still remained, she simply couldn't remember how to release her skills. In her panic and anger, she balled her hands into fists and shot towards Ling Chen. Although the Cherry Blossom God representative was unable to use any skills, her stats had not changed. Although her hands looked quite small and delicate, if they hit Ling Chen, he would die without a doubt. However, who was Ling Chen? His agility and speed was something that the skill-less Cherry Blossom God representative could not contend with. The Cherry Blossom God representative's teleportation and spatial distortion could allow her to move at monstrous speeds, but none of those were currently available to her. What was even more shameless was that against the Cherry Blossom God representative in this state, Ling Chen even used a broken shadow. With a swish, Ling Chen easily evaded the Cherry Blossom God representative's attack. With broken shadow activated, his body left afterimages as he passed by the Cherry Blossom God representative like a gale and slapped his hand onto her round bottom. Pa! The sound of this slap was incredibly clear and crisp. This slap nearly brought the Cherry Blossom God representative to tears. She was a noble and mighty moon god representative, an existence that no one dared to offend. And yet, a player had slapped her butt. This humiliation felt worse than simply killing her. She turned around and sprang at Ling Chen. However, no matter how fearsome she currently looked, to Ling Chen, she was just like a little lamb. He once again effortlessly evaded her attack as he once again slapped his hand towards her perky butt. Another "pa" sound rang out. I wasn't lying, disobedient girls really will be spanked, Ling Chen said as he stretched out the hand he had spanked her with. He sniffed it with an air of euphoria, as if he was savoring the smell of her butt. The Cherry Blossom God representative stopped moving, not daring to come any closer. She knew that in her current state, against her enemy's monstrous speed, she would only receive humiliation if she continued to attack. Her face alternated between paleness and pinkness, and was so furious that she couldn't say anything. She had the power to control an entire continent, and apart from the ancient beast Yamada no Orochi, TLN, 8-branched giant snake, there was no creature capable of facing off against her. However, she was so powerless against this pitifully weak human, and had been toyed with and humiliated again and again, it would be incredibly easy to kill him, and yet she simply couldn't harm him at all. The Fengchen sect is truly fearsome, or is it that he is my bane? Seeing the cherry blossom god representative stop moving, Ling Chen grinned. That's how a good girl should be. Obedient girls are treated lovingly, and only disobedient girls are spanked. So be obedient and give me the orb. In your dreams, the cherry blossom god representative almost ground her teeth to pieces. This human had actually called her a moon god representative, a girl. The way he looked at her and his tone were like he was speaking to a little lamb that he could kill at any moment. She was a moon god representative, and he was just a low-leveled player. This situation was completely opposite to how it should be. Just as the cherry blossom god representative spoke, the figure in front of her blurred, and a fiery pain spread across her, but as yet another "pa" rang out. This slap was even heavier than the previous two. Ling Chen was much too fast, and because of his strange movements, the cherry blossom god representative was unable to dodge him despite being prepared. It's just a useless orb to you, so why do you have to be so stubborn? Just give it to me and I promise I won't harass you anymore, let alone smack your butt, Ling Chen sincerely said. I won't forgive you, came the cherry blossom god representative's furious reply. Ling Chen frustratedly shrugged as he smirked. His body morphed into a blur of wind as he rushed over. Pa! Yet another slap landed on the cherry blossom god representative's plump butt, and Ling Chen simultaneously squeezed, filling his hand with a soft feeling. Whoa! Ling Chen pressed his hand against his nose, as if he was savoring the smell. Lil sis Snow Cherry, I'm actually worried you'll agree to my offer now, don't rush in giving me the orb, alright? This feeling, bounciness and smell, this is an exquisite ass. It would be wonderful if I could touch it 10 or so times every day. Despite being so powerful, the cherry blossom god representative was on the verge of tears. The current her was no different to a weak woman being taken advantage of by a hooligan. Her shoulders trembled as she took a step back and bit her lips, staying silent. Facing this demonic man, she refused to beg for mercy or give in. As for anything else, there was no point in saying anything else. Despite activating Moon Grief twice, time was nearly up. Ling Chen reluctantly put his hand down as he slowly said, "What a disobedient girl. Since I can tell you're about to cry, I'll stop bullying you. I'll come again soon, so make sure you've thought about my offer clearly before then. Next time, if you're still disobedient, it'll just mean more spanking for you, hee-hey." As he talked, Ling Chen activated Vanishing Shadow and moved far away. Soon, he was outside of the cherry blossom god representative's vision and detection range. Moon Grief's effects ended, but the fiery pain still remained in her butt. Although the pain was not much, she felt like she was going to collapse from the humiliation. She slowly squatted down, with her arms around her knees, curling into a ball. Without anyone else around, she could take off the facade of the moon god representative and let out the weakness and helplessness she felt, as tears rolled down her face. After a while, her face regained its composure, and she stood up. She released her moon god power, once again greatly changing the great sun celestial cherry formation. However, she felt that it was probably useless against that person. She had been humiliated without being able to fight back at all, and her nemesis had many strange powers at his disposal. What was worse was that he would be back, whether it was tomorrow or even sooner. Perhaps leaving here temporarily to avoid him would be the best option. However, she had no way to leave. This was because under the 8 uneven mountains to the north of the Cherry Blossom God Palace, the Yamata no Orochi laid there sealed. The Yamata no Orochi was the most terrifying ancient beast in the East Ocean continent and was at the Saint Destroyer grade. Keeping it sealed was her most important task in the East Ocean continent. The seal that suppressed the Yamata no Orochi came from moon god power, and her moon god power kept it stabilized. If she left, the moon god power in this region would become scattered, greatly weakening the seal. If the Yamata no Orochi broke up, the East Ocean continent would be faced with a catastrophe, and she would be the unforgivable sinner who had caused it. As such, she would never leave for more than 48 hours. After leaving for more than 1 day, she would not be able to leave for at least 7 days. Apart from this reason, no matter how helpless she was against Ling Chen, and no matter how furious she was a moon god representative. If she was forced away like this, what would happen to her dignity as a moon god representative? She simply couldn't accept such a thing. Today, the first thing Ling Chen did after logging on was to use a spatial orb to teleport close to the Cherry Blossom God Palace again. As for the Great Sun Celestial Cherry Formation, he didn't bother with that at all. Before coming, he had imagined all of the scenarios that could play out, such as if a trap had been set here, or if the Cherry Blossom God representative was lying in wait to deal a fatal blow to him, or if she had obtained some sort of godly weapon. Moon grief could cause targets to forget their skills, but couldn't restrict skills from weapons. However, none of those things occurred. After entering the central district of the Celestial Cherry Valley, Ling Chen was able to quickly find the Cherry Blossom God representative by following Xiao Hui. Ling Chen revealed himself, arrogantly yelling, "Girly, your granddaddy's here again. Have you thought clearly about my offer? Are you going to give me the orb or do you want more spanking?" Today, Ling Chen's form of address towards the Cherry Blossom God representative became Girly. Ling Chen once again invoked the disgust and fury of the Cherry Blossom God representative, and caused her to be deeply shocked inwardly. The first time he had come, she had not detected him, and the same went for the second time. This third time, she still had been unable to sense him until he had revealed himself. Ling Chen was already proficient at hiding his aura, and adding on Vanishing Shadow, it was likely that even the 3 moon goddesses would not be able to detect him when he was concealed. "I won't forgive you." It was the same line from the previous day, and it was filled with hatred and anger. As she spoke, the sea of cherry blossom petals under her feet started to float upwards, but then suddenly fell to the ground and disappeared. That's right, the Cherry Blossom God representative had once again forgotten how to use her skills. The skill that she had been casting quickly dissipated. After seeing the Cherry Heart Fury the previous day, Ling Chen naturally would not give the Cherry Blossom God representative a chance to use it. The strength of Moon God representatives was something no one could deny, and even saying that she was unparalleled in the entire East Ocean continent would not be an exaggeration. Her skills were all incredibly powerful, and if it wasn't for Xiao Hui's fast reactions the previous day, he would have been destroyed by the Cherry Heart Fury. Because the Cherry Blossom God representative knew about his evil god's mask and how it worked, the attacks she used were all attacks that could get around it. As such, the safest thing he could do was to prevent her from using her skills. Powerful skills all usually took some time to cast, and this was especially so for skills that had a large range and could get around the evil god's mask by attacking numerous times. These sorts of skills only took the Cherry Blossom God representative 2 or 3 seconds, sometimes even 1 or 2 seconds, to cast, but this was enough time for Ling Chen to react. After all, Ling Chen's reaction speed was simply incomparable. Because the Lunar Scourge's skills could be instantly cast and instantly took effect, as long as Ling Chen was focused and the Cherry Blossom God representative was within range, it would be impossible for her to cast a complete skill before Ling Chen ran away. Despite being affected this skill many times, although the Cherry Blossom God representative outwardly looked calm, deep down she couldn't help but feel shocked. This sort of state was as if her hands and feet had been bound by invisible ropes. Although she had the power to destroy the heavens and the earth, she couldn't use any of it, leaving her at the mercy of her enemy. Luckily, after Ling Chen activated Moon Grief, the Libra orb's effects were activated. Ling Chen evilly laughed, "Girly, I'll ask one more time. Are you going to obediently give me the orb or do I have to spank you again?" The Cherry Blossom God representative took a step back, coldly looking at Ling Chen with contempt. Ling Chen flicked his finger, "Looks like you want to be spanked. Since you like being spanked so much, how can I refuse?" Ling Chen activated Broken Shadow and his body blurred. In 1 second, Ling Chen was standing there with a grin on his face, the next, his hand loudly smacked the cherry blossom god representatives, but, of course, he didn't forget to squeeze it while he was at it. Paw. 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 The Libra orb's effects activated twice in a row, and due to moon grief being linked 3 times, the cherry blossom god representative was toyed with by Ling Chen for nearly 30 seconds. Ling Chen spanked and groped her but 7 or 8 times, then wildly laughed as he ran. After being frozen in place by Moon Shadow, it was impossible for the cherry blossom god representative to chase after him. Ling Chen's plan was very simple: he would harass her once or twice every day and spank her a few times. He refused to believe that this cherry blossom god representative could last for very long. Of course, it was entirely possible for him to harass her 7 or 8 times per day, and the effects would be even better. However, that would result in him using more spatial orbs. He had a limited number of spatial orbs, and couldn't afford to use them so extravagantly. As such, once or twice per day was his limit. Ling Chen stood with his hands on his hips as he bellowed in front of the cherry blossom god palace. Ling Chen felt that he was more and more so becoming a hooligan who came every day to harass a pure young lady, but he enjoyed this feeling. For a player to be toying around with a noble and powerful moon god representative, this was simply too stimulating and exciting. According to Xiao Hui's directions, the cherry blossom god representative should be inside, less than 20 steps away from him. She was in range of Moon Shadow, Moon Flare and Moon Grief. If she did anything suspicious, he would be able to react immediately. Soft footsteps sounded out. Ling Chen's arrival didn't cause the cherry blossom god representative to react much. It was as if she had accepted that no matter how much she struggled, it would be useless against his power. Soon, she stood in front of the cherry blossom god palace and coldly looked at him, showing no signs of attacking. This caused Ling Chen to feel a bit uncertain. However, he still acted quite arrogantly. "Girly, looks like your mood is pretty good today. Are you going to give me the orb today, or are you feeling an itch on your butt and want your granddaddy to get rid of it for you? You won't be able to escape today." The cherry blossom coldly replied. This reply was completely different to her replies from the previous days. This caused Ling Chen to become confused for a moment, and he felt the ground trembling under his feet. Ling Chen instantly reacted, activating Moon Grief. However, the trembling in the ground continued, and soon he could hear clacking sounds. Ling Chen frowned, and quickly looked up. There was not a single cloud in the sky, and against the blueness of a sky, a barely visible light could be seen, which formed a large net of light. It covered the entire sky, extending to some unknown place. This was a ceiling barrier? Ling Chen frowned as he muttered. This power barrier exists to protect the god palace behind me. As soon as the barrier is activated, nothing can enter or exit. Even her ladyship the goddess order would not be able to destroy the barrier in a short period of time. As she spoke, the cherry blossom god representative looked like a white jade statue, revealing no emotions. "Every time you came here, you stayed for a very short period of time. After releasing your powerful skills, you would always hurriedly rush off. Evidently, those skills you used to restrict me have limitations, and can only protect you for a short period of time. Today, you are dead beyond a doubt." As she spoke, the cherry blossom god representative's eyes became even colder, like a pure snow lotus that had been frozen. Just a glance from her eyes was enough to make anyone feel chills in their hearts. Currently, she couldn't use any skills due to Moon Grief, so she stood unmoving. When Moon Grief's effects ended, she would immediately relentlessly attack him. She was certain that whether it was the skill that froze her body in place or the terrifying skill that made her forget her skills, they only lasted for a short period of time. Otherwise, he wouldn't have run off after harassing her for a short while every time. Now, with this barrier, it was impossible for Ling Chen to escape, so when his skills ran out, she would destroy him. Ling Chen stealthily took out a spatial orb and tried to use it. Ding, you have been sealed within a powerful barrier, the spatial energy in the spatial orb is unable to be used. Ling Chen revealed no panic on his face. Instead, he smiled as he slowly walked forwards, and activated Moon Shadow when he was 3 steps away from the Cherry Blossom God representative. Ding! Libra Orb's effect has been activated, Moon Shadow's cooldown time has been rest. Ling Chen smirked and arrived before the Cherry Blossom God representative in an instant. She looked even more beautiful from a close distance. Her white dress couldn't hide her curves, her slim hips, her curvy waist, and her beautiful butt. Every inch of her was incredibly alluring and charming, and yet gave off an air of elegance and purity. This aura came from her noble status as a moon god representative, and was not something ordinary women could have. Ling Chen's expression became quite perverted, as if he was a starving wolf eyeing a young girl. He continued to walk forwards until his entire body was pressed against hers, even their faces were pressed together, with their noses touching. Her large and soft breasts were pressed against his chest, and her long and slim legs were also pressed against his legs. Ling Chen's body instantly reacted in a way that any man's would, and he felt the hardest place on his body press against an abnormally soft place, causing him to softly gasp. The frozen cherry blossom god representative's pupils constricted, but she was unable to resist or even make a sound. Pressed up against her, the already beautiful cherry blossom god representative seemed even more beautiful, so much so that it seemed like an illusion. The whiteness of her skin could rival that of extremely pure snow, and was as smooth as sheep-fat white jade. What a pretty girly, Ling Chen stretched out his hands and gently stroked her face. The softness of her skin made him feel like he was touching the highest quality silk in existence, not only pretty, but has large breasts and a round butt. I even want to take her home and make her mine. It's a pity that she's just a bit too naive. His hands fell from her face to her neck, then even lower. He chuckled, and pressed them against her incredibly large breasts. In that moment, he could see the cherry blossom god representative's eyes widen, and his hands quickly fell as he loudly spanked her twice. At the same time, a blinding light shot from his right wrist, blinding her. You really think you can seal me? Watch as I leave, Hey. This light was the most blinding and piercing light that the cherry blossom god representative had ever experienced. She was unable to close her eyes, and her world became a world of white. She could hear Ling Chen's raucous laughter, and she squeezed her eyes shut as soon as she regained control over her body. When the light disappeared, she spread out her divine sense, but could not detect Ling Chen's presence. Concealment? That was the only possibility. The sealing barrier that protected the Cherry Blossom God Palace was incredibly powerful. Even if the 3 moon goddesses were trapped within it, they would not be able to leave within a short period of time. No matter how strange his skills were, his own power was quite weak, so it would be impossible for him to escape. No matter how powerful one's concealment skill was, they would not be able to perfectly mask their presence, and the concealment wouldn't last forever. The cherry blossom god representative examined every inch that the barrier covered with her divine sense. 1 minute passed. 10 minutes passed. 30 minutes passed. 1 hour passed. Apart from the sound of water flowing and bugs chirping, there were no other sounds, and there was no trace of Ling Chen anywhere. Could it be that he really escaped? Impossible, the cherry blossom god representative muttered to herself in her shock. However, she simply couldn't believe or accept that she couldn't find Ling Chen. Indeed, Ling Chen was no longer within the barrier. More precisely, he was not within the game anymore. He got up from his bed and wiped off the cold sweat on his head, muttering, "Does that girly really not know that players have an ultimate boss skill called logging off?" Since even the spatial orb was powerless against the barrier, it would be impossible for him to escape out of it. As such, when he couldn't use his moon flare, moon grief and moon shadow, if he was still within the barrier, the cherry blossom god representative would annihilate him. As such, logging off was his only option. However, logging off wasn't that simple. If he wanted to safely log off, he had to somehow escape the Cherry Blossom God representative's aggro. As such, he froze her with Moon Shadow, groped all over her body to throw her mind into disarray, then used Moon Flare to throw her into even greater chaos. Then he used Vanishing Shadow to conceal himself, and, while the Cherry Blossom God representative couldn't lock onto him, he safely logged off. Ling Chen was 100% sure that the barrier wouldn't last for too long. Perhaps there were also strict limitations on using it. Otherwise, the Cherry Blossom God representative wouldn't have waited until today to use it. Logically, she would have used it on the very first day. After logging off, he would muck around for as long as he wanted, as he simply didn't believe that the barrier would last forever. We'll see who can outlast the other person. Tian lay beside him. Her milky white face was very peaceful, and she would often smile, as if she was very happy in the game. Ling Chen pulled the blanket over, gently covering her body. He always felt deeply guilty towards Tian. Tian was at the age where girls should be the happiest. At that age, they would usually be happily enjoying their school life, playing with friends, going to amusement parks. For Shura, Ling Chen spent nearly all of his time in the game, holding on to that little bit of hope. He had almost thrown away everything else, and yet Tian continued to stay by his side, living a secluded life in this bamboo sea wonderland. Even in the game, he was unable to spend time with her. Ling Chen always knew that Tian always wanted to go out. In the past, she was always the happiest and laughed the most when they went out to play. However, she had never complained, and instead hung a smile on her face. She was never as demanding as before, and did her best to look after him so that she wouldn't be a burden, and to help him get over the pain of Shura leaving them. Tian, when Rua's back. I'll use all of my time to make it up to you and Rua. Ling Chen gently spoke as he put his hand on Tian's head. The size of this man-made lake was about average, and the water was very clear. You could see the pebbles at the bottom just from standing near the lake. The bottom of the man-made lake hid an advanced filtering system, and the quality was regularly monitored by extracting the underground water. There was no question that the cost of such a lake was very expensive. Ling Chen took off his jacket and with his eyes closed, jumped into the lake. It hadn't yet reached 9 a.m. in the morning, so the water was cold enough to make his hair stand. But it didn't take him long to adjust to the water, and within a few seconds, he was fully immersed in the coolness and joy the water had brought him. Ling Chen sank to the bottom, with only his head out of water and his back leaning against the wall. He hadn't been so relaxed for a while. He wasn't sure whether he should give his thanks to that Cherry Blossom God representative for this experience. After a while, he opened his eyes. With a long breath of relief, he called out, Ying. The two of them arrived swiftly, and stood side by side behind Ling Chen. Both Ying and Shi dressed revealing and sexy as usual. With a see-through chiffon top wrapped around their full soft breasts and willow-like waists, their skin was showing, as white as snow. The ocean blue short skirt barely covered up half of their long and ivory-white legs, making them look sexually enticing. Every guy would surely have wanted to pursue a girl like them, especially when there were two of them. A normal guy would not be able to control his male hormones from rising, and withhold from the fantasy of having sex with both of them. Of course, this could only be in their imagination. It was too shameful to admit to such a perverted mind, especially when they were both so elegant and respectable, which was also why no one in the town had the audacity to get close with them. Countless men had tried to pursue them since they arrived in Suhang. However, all of them were killed by the girls. Their charm and beauty are irresistible, being named as roses with deadly poison. They wouldn't have allowed physical touch with any other men except Ling Chen. Master, do you have any orders? Both asked in synchronism, with one leg knelt near the lake. The way they posed themselves in front of Ling Chen resonated with how a loyal servant would serve in front his king. As they were speaking, they blushed lightly when they noticed his clothes on the side of the lake. They oversaw most of the housekeeping for Ling Chen, and judging from the clothes on the side, Ling Chen was without clothes in the water, naked. Ling Chen did not turn around, and with his eyes closed, he asked, "Any updates on Buggy from Guaya? Perhaps, any movement?" Chao Shi replied with a clear voice, reporting to Master, "Buggy is still in prison underground at Xianyuan family's place. He is in a good condition, so please don't worry." Long Zhengyang seemed to have given some orders that Buggy wouldn't be questioned or tortured. He has been eating and sleeping well, even his leg wounds were checked regularly by someone. He would be able to escape easily once his leg wounds have healed. If it weren't for his wounds that were still recovering, the prison cells at Xianyuan's place wouldn't have been able to trap him. Ling Chen seemed somewhat relieved as Chao Ying continued to speak, "Master, the rumors have now died down. On the surface, the Long family seem to have lost their interests in arresting you, but deep down, they have never stopped searching for you. However, you have recovered enough to not worry about their search. Rather, this situation only shows how much they're scared of what you can do now." Ling Chen didn't really care about the Long family searching for him. All his deep wounds would have been recovered by the time they found him. Even if all the 7 secret troops were deployed, they still wouldn't be able to stop him if he wanted to leave. "Have you heard anything from Feng Xiaoyu?" Ling Chen looked up, staring at the sky. "Xiaoyu must have been Jia Wu must be Xiaoyu. Why didn't I hug her immediately when I already suspected something? You starved because of me, and had your heart die for me. Even now, you had to betray all your family and relatives because of me. As for me, I lost the chance to meet you because of my stupid envy and pride. Perhaps, this was God's punishment for me as I didn't hold on to you tightly enough at that time. I have come to fully realize that you should never harm or let go of someone you love dearly. Instead, use all your strength to treasure and protect them before it's too late." Chao Ying and Chao Shi glanced at each other, looking perplexed. Chao Shi slightly shook her head and said, "We have always been looking, but we still have not found her in both reality and in game. Neither could the Long family and Xianyuan family. Also, she levels up really fast in game and her rankings have always remained top in Asia, which means that she must be gaming most of the time. If you find her, please bring her here, and tell her that Tianya is waiting for her here." Ling Chen thought of the last night he was with Jia Wu. "No matter what happens, Jia Wu, please stay well." Time slipped by, it has been 11 years. "Jia Wu, I wonder how you looked now. Surely a pretty woman. After all, you had always been so flawless since little, like a little angel." "All good, there's nothing else, you both can go now." After dismissing them, Ling Chen started meditating on his own with his eyes closed. However, a while had passed, but he didn't hear Chao Ying and Chao Shi leave. He opened his eyes and turned around in suspicion. All he could see was a long beautiful leg pointing at the lake near him. The leg was so pretty in white like snow, with perfect size proportions and elegant curves. It was enough to take a man's breath away, without even needing to see whose leg it was. Another pretty leg appeared immediately afterwards and went into the lake in front of Ling Chen. Another pair of stunning legs slid into the water from his left-hand side as well. Chao Ying and Chao Shi had their jackets off and were only wearing a light blue lacy lingerie with both of their snowy white shoulders showing. Their skin was soft like the winter snow, and arms, smooth as jades. Their full breasts jutted forward and were partially covered. They were bouncing up and down with such force that their bras were about to come off as both girls jumped down in the water. They were not wearing any skirts but only a pinafore just enough to cover their sacred parts, the light blue color matching with their bras. Their long legs now were fully exposed in the water. Ling Chen's mind went blank for a bit when he sensed the girl's presence. By the time he reacted, Chao Shi and Chao Ying were already naked and leaning onto him tightly. There was nothing between their smooth skins and his body, and they were gently caressing Ling Chen's chest up and down. "Master, let us serve you as you bathe." Like before, Chao Ying and Chao Shi looked at Ling Chen alluringly, their voices soft as a breeze and their bodies as fragile as water. No one would have rejected them if they heard their voices. Although they both acted so comfortably, their faces were still somewhat blushing. After all, they were both quiet and obedient. Either one wouldn't have the audacity to act so flirtatiously if there were only one of them there. Ling Chen's body scars were small, and would disappear after a while. His body muscles were very firm, and its proportions were impeccable. His incredible physique redefined the beauty standards for men. So, when their hands touched his chest, inhaling his masculine scent, they became more aroused and passionate. You too, Ling Chen could clearly see both of their breasts moving no matter where he looked. Along with their beautifully blushed faces, it was as if they were tempting him to play with them. Ling Chen's first reaction was to run. Ever since the day he vowed to protect Shui Rua, he no longer allowed any blood to stain his hands, especially from taking away some other girl's virginity. If Shui Rua were here, he would have been the first one to leave no matter how aroused he had gotten. However, this thought had not lasted longer than even half a second, as it was apparent that he remained standing in the water. He already knew that Chao Ying and Chao Shi wouldn't have acted this way if Shui Rua was still here. Chao Ying and Chao Shi were sent to the hell at the age of 3, so they had no idea where their home was, who their siblings and parents were. Going through the same experience as the others, they slowly turned into scary killing machine. They first met Ling Chen from heaven when they were 13. Half a year later, Ling Chen was rewarded with Chao Ying and Chao Shi as sex slaves, after defeating every male contestant in the competition at hell. That night, Ling Chen took away both their innocence and marked them permanently as his own possessions. Since then, they had accompanied Ling Chen everywhere he went. Chao Ying and Chao Shi's status was high, ranked just under Eve. Thus, numerous people had tried to steal them away from Ling Chen, but no one had succeeded. Their attempts all ended in terrible deaths and failures. Until Instructor Hell had been defeated by Adam and Eve, Chao Ying and Chao Shi had always been Ling Chen's possessions. It was simply not possible for them to forget all emotions even though they had grown up in hell. Chao Ying and Chao Shi had become Ling Chen's shadows after being around him for years. And to Ling Chen, it was impossible not to feel attached to them, even when he tried to resist it, treating them like sex slaves. After all, he only thought about Xian Yuan Jia Wu all the time. He also had a lot of alternatives during that time, including Mu Bingyao, Yao Ying, Qian Mo, as well as Shui Mei, Yun Yao and Lina, who were now taken away by Eve. The fight only happened once every 3 months, and only the winner had the ability to select their slaves. Ling Chen, being the winner all the time, took away all the best virgins in the entire hell area. Likewise, the reward for women was also the choice of their own slaves. Unfortunately, Ling Chen was also once chosen to be some woman's sex toy. The first thing he heard after coming back to China was that Jia Wu had already died of hunger many years ago. Feeling hopeless, he fought with the Long family and just escaped after being heavily wounded. It was destiny that he went down to Zhongzhou and met Shui Rua there. Since then, he had ditched Chao Ying, Chao Shi, Mu Bingyao and all the other women who he had sex with. One could even say that he was being brutal and heartless towards the other girls, that, for a few years, Chao Ying and Chao Shi had barely gotten to see Ling Chen at all. But it was clear that Ling Chen was trying to run away from them. Those twins were still crazily infatuated with him no matter how heartless he acted. They wouldn't even allow themselves to get intimate with other guys, making everyone wonder if it was because they were dumb or if Ling Chen was just too lucky. Now that Shui Rua was gone, they could be themselves and fight for their love. Ling Chen also realized a lot after Shui Rua left. He now could not bring himself to continue hurting the two girls. Of course, that was just an excuse he came up for himself. The real reason was that as they touched him, his blood and body temperature were rising uncontrollably. Surely even gods would not have been able to resist being around two beautiful girls. Both his arms were clutched by two soft balls, and their smooth skin brushed his back. He could smell the scent of their bodies getting stronger. And as he looked down, he saw two snowy white legs diving into the water, creating ripples, with their curves flawlessly perfect. Ling Chen didn't speak nor resist, which made both Chao Shi and Chao Ying fill with even more anticipation. Chao Ying pulled him closer to her body, and gently whispered into his ears, "Master, close your eyes, and don't talk. Let us help soothe you like we used to, please." At that moment, whatever Ling Chen said would have broken the moment of peace and changed the dynamics. He followed her request and closed his eyes, his sense of hearing and touch becoming more sensitive without his sight. For soft hands gently stroked over his chest and back, slowly going further each time. From the top to the bottom, then moving back up again, the two girls used both their hands as if wanting to feel every change his body had faced over their years of separation. Ling Chen felt like he was in heaven as the water and the scent of the girls encompassed him, making him lose all sense. But as they became more intense, he felt a sensation coming from his lower body. After some time, he heard someone slide through the water, and immediately felt a strange and soft feeling from below, making him go crazy with pleas. He then realized that it was from the girls licking and sucking his member. Ling Chen's legs flexed, and his muscles started clenching all over and tensing awkwardly. This probably happened because he hadn't been served like this in a while. Along with the tingling sensation, every time they twirled their tongue around his penis, he became incredibly more aroused. He opened his eyes and looked down. Both girls fell between his legs, with their beautiful hair tucked behind. Their long hair fell all the way down their backs, wrapping around to their chests, and their necks were white and long. They had long since unhooked their bras, with the straps hanging aside on their right arms. Their backs, white as snow, and their full breasts under water were all visible to the naked eye. The girls looked up, staring at him flirtatiously. However, going by the look of their redness, they were still somewhat embarrassed and shy. Ling Chen felt amused seeing how much they tried to please him. Someone's arm wrapped around him from the back, and he could feel them tightly pressing onto his back. Her soft breasts caressed him from top to bottom, and occasionally, stimulating sounds of panting could be heard from behind him. The thrill and the girls were already enough to excite a person, especially when there were two of them, one in front and one from the back. Even Lu Xiaohui, said to be the most virtuous man in China, would have to show him respect if Ling Chen was able to resist a temptation like this. Ling Chen couldn't tell them apart, so he leaned over and grabbed the girl between his legs and lifted her curvy body above the water in the air. Her skin was as white and smooth as lanolin, and the blush of red just made it even more attractive. In the end, Ling Chen could not bear it anymore and stripped off her clothes immediately. He pushed her onto the ground, pulled her legs apart and ruthlessly thrust himself inside. The fact that there was no material between them made their body temperatures feed off each other's heat, and the girl moaned. Her voice was soft and sexual, and her long legs circled around his waist like vines, gently spreading apart. Her body softened under Ling Chen's intense thrusting, and orgasmed again and again. The girl's lashes fluttered and her eyes turned misty, her cheeks, red as fire. Both Ling Chen and the girl were panting from breathlessness as their warm bodies moved like the weak willows in the wind. Another girl hugged Ling Chen from behind, her chest lightly grazing his back, and her hands were stroking his body. The redness of her face felt as hot as fire as she breathed heavily. Ling Chen released all his worries and concerns as his blood pressure rose like boiling water. He took full pleasure in touching Chao Shi and Chao Ying's curvy bodies and white skin, and Chao Shi and Chao Ying had finally gotten their wishes granted, taking turns lying under his body bearing the brunt of his thrusts. The thrill and joy sex had brought them ignited their passion and desire. 3 bodies tangled up, feverishly making love underwater. Ling Chen returned to the game 3 hours later, but did not see the cherry blossom god representative. The barrier around him had also disappeared. As he expected, to open a strong barrier like that had required a lot of energy, and could only be used for emergencies. Thus, it would not have lasted very long. Ling Chen laughed vigorously, and strode towards the cherry blossom god palace. He had wanted to continue his plan of harassing the cherry blossom god representative until she gave him the orb. Of course, he only ended up taking advantage of her by spanking her but, leaving empty-handed. On the 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th day, for 7 days straight, Ling Chen always went to the central district of the celestial Cherry Valley and used to the same way to harass the cherry blossom god representative. Even if Ling Chen always used the same tactics on her, she still could not find a way to defeat him, and Ling Chen always got away doing the same thing, spanking her butt or touching her breasts and legs. Perhaps the lunar scourge's power was too strong that she was not able to defeat at all. About the ceiling barrier, she had never opened it again. Since the day Ling Tian went offline, it made the cherry blossom representative think that she could easily escape as well, but it wasn't possible as the ceiling barrier was not a place you could easily get access to. Despite being the top moon god representative, she was still bullied by Ling Chen on and off without a way to fight back. On the 8th day, however, Ling Chen didn't visit the cherry blossom god palace again. Instead, he sat somewhere near the outskirts of the city, scratching his head. He had not gotten the results he wanted even though he had been harassing her for 7 days now. The cherry blossom god representative seemed tougher than he thought she was. Her face now looked so firm, he could tell she would not give him that orb no matter how much she was bullied. After all, she no longer looked even the least surprised and after a while, had long become used to Ling Chen smacking her butt.